Good morning.
I don't know.
Diane,
He said he's going to be here. Yeah. He said he was running late.
We're disasters today, Chris.
You can see my back.
Good morning, and welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, December 9th, 2014, the regular meeting. Today we have a closed session item as item number 1 on the agenda for public employee appointment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, County Council. We're going to go into closed session. I'll take any public comments on this item before adjourning to closed session. Any public comments? Okay. All right.
That's next week.
Seeing none.
That's what happens when you're 73 years old.
Good. Or 42.
Don't have a bitter about that.
Well, keep that in mind.
Okay, seeing none, we are going to move into closed session. We okay? No. Okay, welcome back. This is Calaveras County Board of Supervisors meeting of Tuesday, December 9th, 2014, a regular meeting. We started a meeting this morning at 8:30 with a call to order. Sought for public comment, had no public comment. We went into closed session. Public employee appointment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957 for County Council. The board took a decision this morning during closed session for public employment pursuant to Government Code Section 54957 by unanimous vote. The board appointed interim County Council Megan Stedfield to the position of County Council for Calaveras County effective December 27, 2014. We directed staff to bring back a resolution for next Tuesday to memorialize this appointments. Megan, would you like to say a few things?
Yeah, just briefly. I just wanted to say that I'm humbled and honored that the board would choose to appoint me as the next county council. I look forward to the challenge, and I believe I'm confident that I, along with my staff, will be able to continue to provide good, sound legal advice to the board and to the county as a whole. It's a privilege to be able to serve my community in this capacity. So thank you, and I promise I'll do the best that I can.
Megan. Thank you, Megan. Okay, at this point I ask that you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I have no announcements this morning. Next on our item on the agenda is a recognition and acknowledgement. Coming from the administrative office, we have adopting a proclamation recognizing the work of the Native Daughters of the Golden West. And I'll refer to Shirley, or I think, is this Marita?
The Native Daughters asked to be recognized. They're having a recognition on the 14th, and I want to thank Diane for helping us put this together quite quickly.
Mary Rose.
And, oh, yes.
It was Mary Rose that did.
Mary Rose, thank you so very much on behalf of the Native Daughters. I don't think the public always realizes the time frames we need to abide by. And so they put it together quite quickly, and this will be presented to them on the 14th of December. So I make a motion that we approve this.
I'll say.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Edson, to approve or adopt the proclamation.
I think you did say quicker. I had a little preamble there.
All right, I heard it added this year, so I'm going to go with Supervisor Edson as the second. Adopting a proclamation recognizing the work of the Native Daughters of the Golden West. Any discussion on this item? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. At this time, we have our public comment section of the agenda. This is for any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or the regular agenda may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the consent agenda. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued at the conclusion of the regular agenda in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard. All right, this is the public comment item on the agenda, and we'll allow the 5 minutes for public comments. Good morning, Barbara.
Good morning, Barbara Sullivan, Treasurer Tax Collector. I'm doing a public service announcement for the taxpayers of Calaveras County that tomorrow is the 10th, the final deadline for the taxes that are due, that were due November 1st, but they're delinquent after tomorrow. And with the storm coming up, I thought I'd maybe make an extra note of that, so that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Sullivan.
Good morning, Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. I, too, came here to talk about taxes because I get these every year. They come in the mail, and usually I write a check and send it all off, but this year I didn't want to do that, and I'm going to wait until tomorrow because I'm thinking I could die tonight, and you guys would have my money, and I wouldn't have anything to say about how you were going to be spending it. So I'm going to wait till tomorrow. That means driving an extra ride to San Andreas to pay my property tax bill. But this year, I didn't feel good about my taxes. I felt like I wanted more accountability. I wanted some attention given to the county employees through no fault of their own, who don't get COLAs or pay raises. And I'm talking about, of course, the home care workers who've been stuck for 5 years at the same wage. If I felt that my property taxes were being distributed equitably and fairly, I would have sent this off back in September when I got my tax bill. But I'm sitting on it because, like I said, if I'm not here tomorrow, I don't want you guys to be in charge of my money. You're going to have to sue my estate, although there won't be one, in order to get your taxes. I hope I don't die tonight, but if I do, I ain't going to pay my taxes until I'm dead. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dave Vaccarezza, 1149 Dunbar, Arnold, California. I just wanted to come up today and remind you about our new website at www.cal-waste.com. I probably brought that to you last time. But my real reason for being here today is, I just wanted to have the opportunity to thank a couple of supervisors, particularly Marita Callaway, who, when I came to the county, really kind of sat me down and explained to me what was going on in solid waste, and she had the patience to come down and see what we're doing in our facilities down in the Galt area, and kind of showed me around the county solid waste department and what they're doing and how things work up here, and also familiarized me with the county and how it works and how to reach out to people here and become part of the community. And I really want to thank you for your many years of service here. You've done a fabulous job, and what you've done with the Solid Waste Division is incredible, and I want to thank you for that and allowing me to have the opportunity to be here.
And thank you for Big Blue.
You bet. And I want to thank Daryl for his time that he has spent with me. He took the time to come down and see what we're doing, look at some new ideas, and I think those ideas will move on into the future as well. But I want to thank the rest of the board, but thank you for the opportunity today. But again, thank you very much, both of you, for your service. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comments?
Joe Kelly. new information from FEMA, and it's according to FEMA information which I have, which you may not have heard before or seen yet. And it's a quote out of this documentation I've received. As a participant in the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP, since September 5th, 1990, Calaveras County has agreed to adopt and enforce the floodplain management regulations required for participation, which are designed to prevent new development in special flood hazard areas from increasing the flood threat and to protect new and existing buildings from anticipated flood events, unquote. It appears any construction that predates the county's participation in the NFIP does not constitute new development in the SFHA or a violation to the community's NFIP compliance status. Now, I say that because it appears that they have changed their, well, I sent them a letter, and then it got followed up through Congressman McClintock's office asking them, be specific, give an explanation of what the violation is they claimed the county was in problem with. Well, this is part of the information that came back. So now they want to step back and step away from it because of this 1970s potential construction of that illegal water retention facility obstruction in Nassau Creek. But although I would say they are still stuck with it because the NFIP 1968. And if they aren't stuck with it there, then they're stuck with it through the Colby-Elquist Act 1977, where the state of California passed down to the counties and local agencies the responsibilities of land use, floodplain, and floodplain management. So to go on with this is what has the county done in the past 24 years to alert property owners and potential property buyers in Calaveras? Before you say natural hazard disclosure document, read the front page of the document, the disclosure statement on it. It's contrary. This county has had flooding and mudslides recorded in 1997 in District 3. It seems as if the OES, Office of Emergency Services, didn't survey the rest of the county. Why not? This year, if my property floods, I will be calling the Sheriff's Office requesting OES to come out and verify what's going on. A reading assignment. Now, this is primarily due to what's coming up possibly tomorrow or in the near future with Congressman McClintock's office. A reading assignment. DWR announces report on floods in California. New recommendations to reduce flood damage, preserve agriculture, and restore the environment. June 11, 2003. Just for, not specifically, but just for additional, to give a reference to look at it, page 54, definitions of floodplain management. Page 57, the National Flood Insurance Act of 1968 created the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP. An excerpt from this particular document. The NFIP is designed to reduce future flood losses through state and local floodplain management efforts and to transfer the cost of residual flood losses from the general taxpayer to the floodplain occupant. So we see what's going on with this thing, and it also brings to play that you have the opportunity to also contact DWR, and they will actually come out through what they call a CAV, and I'm sorry, it's a community action, don't remember the last word, but it is stuff that they can come out and do. So we might as well start looking to bring the DWR in here also, if they will come, and see what can come about from that. Another reading, Water Code Section 8400, 8401, the Colby-Elquist Floodplain Management Act, November 1977. The last reading, California Department of Water Resources Floodplain Management Branch, 5-year Floodplain Management Plan, prepared for Federal Emergency Management Agency, 2005. So 1997 to this year, 37 years, what has the county done for other than District 3? 1968 to this year, 46 years. What has the federal government, state of California, and Calaveras County done for other than District 3? So I also wish you happy reading on this stuff for those of you who might take it up to do it. I have provided a copy to Mr. Edson of the email that I sent. This is an email discussion with Mr. Segala, conversation with Mr. Segala. So it's in your records here. It's also in the records of Planning Department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And maybe no more FEMA 2014, since we're going to 2015.
Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. I'm trying to remember what he said. One of the things that he did say that I did remember is apparently when the county made an agreement with FEMA, it took on a responsibility to do some things that involve flood work. It might be a good idea to look at that again and see what really the county is supposed to do according to that agreement. I wasn't aware that that was going on. Also, from the reading I've done, there's a tremendous amount of information, and it'd chew up all your time just try to read it. But it appears that the local FEMA representatives were sincere in their efforts to try to correct the plans. There are certain things that they did and they agreed to do that were changed by Washington, their boss. So we have, but the county is facing what FEMA does, not what the local representatives, are willing to do. It's hard to this is a terrible injustice to property owners in this county. We don't know how many they are. There could be as many as 5,000 people that are subject to being required to buy unwanted and unneeded flood insurance. It's called insurance, but it's really not that. It's something else. There seems to be several categories of people. One would be lot holders that do not have any improvements on their land, and it has no immediate effect on them because they're not forced to buy insurance because they don't have a federal guaranteed loan. It's only those people that have federal guaranteed loans. In Copperopolis, the Unit 8A, which is a mobile home park section, is under the floodplain. However, it doesn't seem to affect the property owners because there's to my knowledge, there's no Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac insured lenders that have any loans there or would have loans there. The loans that there are private loans, usually seller financing, that sort of thing. And then the other category is people that have homes now on property in which a portion of the property is just touched by this map. They're not under flood danger according to where their home is on the property because the home is above that. As I understand what's happening now, FEMA wants them to go through an engineering process with surveying to prove that their home is above the flood plain. The other category of people is people who have existing loans. If they have an existing loan, and let's say they were really in the flood zone and that they would be subject to flood, the question is, can that lender, even though they approved the loan, it might be an old loan, can they now force them to get flood insurance or not? The only thing a lender can do would be to threaten to foreclose. So if they threaten to foreclose for a non-monetary type thing, I'm not sure that would be legal. I don't think they can foreclose on people who make their payments. So even if the federal government would want to force the lender to force the flood insurance on people that don't want it but are in a flood zone, I'm not sure what I'm not an attorney, but I doubt that the homes could be foreclosed on. So far, the Taxpayer Association is trying to reach out to the property owners that are in the FEMA flood maps. As I understand, there's 7,200 parcels, and I understand that there's 2,200 parcels that were in such a condition prior to these new maps that were drawn.
30 seconds.
If it's possible, we would like to reach the people that are subsequent to that 2,200 at that date if we can. I don't know if we have the skills to do that or not. We may have to do a mailing to all the 7,200 if the county and if FEMA won't notify those people, I think we're the only one left that would. And so we would proceed to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any additional public comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll move to the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion. Any board members wish to remove an item from consent?
Number 6.
Any staff members wish to remove an item from consent?
Number 3, you have it scheduled for a later date already, actually.
Okay. Any public wish to remove an item from consent? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion on items 3,
Motion to approve.
4, 5, 7, and 8. I have a motion made by Director Wright, second by, not Director, Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Edson. I'm just seeing if you guys are paying attention, and so far so good. Okay. To approve the balance of the consent agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, item number 3 was pulled for later discussion. Item number 6 was pulled. Public Works, amend the prioritized list of projects for pursuing grant funding opportunities. And item number 2, authorizing the Public Works Director to apply for and receive grants through the Calaveras Council of Governments current cycle for projects. Supervisor Edson, you pulled this item?
Yes. And the reason I pulled it is, I know we approved the number 1 project that we did last year. And I think it was through, but we didn't get the grant for it, right? So I'm just wondering if all we can, why is it that all we can do is get one project at a time per year? Is there more out there, or is there possibilities that we can go after more projects than just one per year?
Yes. Robert Packinger, Public Works. The item that was submitted a few months ago, that was for the Active Transportation Grant Program administered by Caltrans. This particular round of projects is a grant, a funding program administered through the Council of Governments. Our intent is to, well, first off, the pot of money is relatively small. Our intent is to submit projects within a reasonable funding amount where we could actually complete a certain phase of the project within the funding amount available. So we're going to be submitting 3 projects. A portion of the ATP project that we originally submitted as the sidewalk on Highway 49 project that was turned down. We're going to try to submit only a phase of that. We're trying to do the preliminary engineering part of that. If we could get that funded, as we work on different phases of that particular project, we hope to get to the point where it could be a shovel-ready project and make that a more competitive project when we submit something through the Caltrans program in future cycles. The same with the other projects that we have. The Old Strait Road left turn pocket is a project that we already have plans and specifications completed. Those were completed under a different grant program administered by the state. We didn't have enough funding for doing the right-of-way portion of that project. There was an expense on moving power poles. So for this grant cycle, we want to be able to complete moving the utilities, and then again, hopefully we make that project more competitive when we compete on the statewide funding cycles. So we're trying a different approach, just different phases, various different projects. As other funding opportunities arise, there's different things that come from the state. We'll be looking to see what we can submit. Of course, we have to keep in mind our delivery. We have to keep in mind our workload, make sure that we get enough resources to deliver the projects that we say we're going to deliver and not bite off too much that we can't swallow. And then we can't deliver anything. So we're trying to be careful in that aspect also.
So the one that we got turned down, what was it was ATP?
ATP, that was the active transportation grant.
Where did it go?
My understanding from the information that from the Council of Governments, most of that went to larger population areas.
Like Stockton?
I'm not sure exactly what the larger areas were that were approved, but they didn't come to our small rural areas.
You mean the county as a whole? Or
The county as a whole, I understand other rural areas didn't receive funding. We're not competitive in that arena.
Okay. Thank you, Robert.
So to be competitive, we're trying to get projects into phases that hopefully we just have construction that we need to fund. So little by little, we'll get these projects designed and the environmental completed. And then that's a project that hopefully for the state is a much more competitive project that they would be willing to fund.
Okay, well, one of the reasons why I asked is because just last week we had fatality on 26, which seems to continue to happen frequently. And then there was another accident on 26 where 4 teenagers were involved. Luckily, none of them got hurt really bad. But 26 is a problem between La Cadenta and where it needs to go. And Westwood, pretty much. So, it's something that probably should have been done a long time ago. Unfortunately, funds seem to get redirected to other projects, and I don't know, what we can do about that. But there's a lot of traffic down there. There's traffic jams. I think the 1226 intersection is going to, the improvements are going to take care of it. It's not going to take care of it. It's going to make it a little bit more, maybe a little quicker one way, but not the other way. So I really believe that I would like to see a little bit more, attention given to the ultimate resolution for that area. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any further questions on this item? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Yes. No public comment?
Second.
Okay. I have a motion made by Supervisor Edson, second by Supervisor Wright, to amend the prioritized list of projects for pursuing grant funding opportunities. Number 2, authorize the Public Works Director to apply for and receive grant funds through the Calaveras County government's current cycle for projects. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Could you take a 2-minute recess before you go to regular agenda?
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
2 is fine.
A 2-minute recess. We'll take a 2-minute recess before we go on to item number 9.
Thank you.
Regular agenda. Item number 9 from the Sheriff's Department. We have accepted the 2014 COPS Hiring Grants Award from the United States Department of Justice, Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services. Item number 2, approve a draw on contingencies from the general fund in the amount of $28,175 for the Sheriff's Office fiscal year 2014-15 Control General Fund Budget Unit for financing of the county sheriff costs under the 2014 COPS Hiring Grant. Requires a 4/5 vote. Approve offsetting adjustments to revenues and expenditures in the amount of $84,510 to the Sheriff's Office fiscal year 2014-15 Patrol General Fund Budget Unit for the recipient and expenditure of the federal government's share of costs under 2014 COPS hiring grant. So this item is a continuation from our November 25th meeting, and we have Captain Macedo here to provide an overview on this item.
Good morning. This is, I was before you a couple of weeks ago speaking about this grant. At that point in time, the board had requested that I look into a couple of matters. One was if the schools were able to provide a portion of the funding match that was required, and also if we were able to look into the waiver. I'll address the waiver first. The waiver would have had to have been requested at the time the grant was submitted, and the waiver would require satisfactory and documented demonstration of severe fiscal distress. There's an itemized list of things, including bankruptcy, but considering the fact that request for a waiver would have had to have been made at the time of the grant, I won't go through the rest of the requirements. As for the school, I reached out to schools. I reached out to several school districts as well as a couple of other education-related agencies and asked if they were able to provide a portion of the match. Unfortunately, none of them were able to offer any funds. I got kind of a varied response, but ultimately the answer was no. They did indicate support for the program, but at this time they were not able to provide any funding.
Okay, are there any questions of Captain Macedo on this item?
I have a question. I wasn't able to be here for that meeting when you last talked about this, and it's just my understanding, looking back at the numbers from your previous meeting, that I see a couple big numbers there, a 300 and some odd, a 400 and some odd, and another 300 and some odd. I think it's like 375 that they're supplying, but we have to put up 488 plus 315 or something like that. Now, I know that, many people know I used to work at the high school, and I know that we had a reserve officer there before, a resource officer, and at that time, what was the funding scenario? I mean, was it similar to this package deal that we're talking about here, or was it funded in some other different way? That's the background I'd like to compare to, like, what are we talking about as compared to how it was funded previously? I mean, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I mean, if you have any kind of knowledge of if there's any difference in the way it was funded before. Or...
Sure. The previous grant was in the late 1990s, and I did not have a budgetary role at that point in time, so my recollection of how exactly that previous grant was laid out financially isn't entirely clear. I do recall we had 2 school resource officers at that time. This grant requests 3, and there was a reason for requesting the 3, which I'll bring up in a moment. There was a match at that time, but it wasn't as significant as it is today. And I don't recall exactly, and I don't want to misspeak, so I don't recall what the percentage or portion was. Similar to this new grant package, though, there was a funding obligation to go at least 1 to 2 years beyond the 3-year grant cycle. You had to agree to commit to continuing to fund that. At one point in time after the grant had expired, one of the school districts did provide some funds to the sheriff's office to continue with 1 school resource officer for a short period of time. But it was really on a limited basis. There wasn't a big, strong need. I think the officer stopped by maybe once a week or a couple times a week. And you are correct. The way the match is laid out, and I do want to clarify something from last meeting. The way the grant is laid out, it is required that there is at least a 25% match per year. Separate from the match, the agreement to fund for a year beyond the grant. That's what's really kind of driving the costs up. And when I originally appeared before the board, I think I probably didn't speak clear enough about the match is really separate from the secondary commitment, which requests that you fund the program beyond the grant.
So we're looking at an obligation of a 25% match for 3 years, and then a full funding on year 4. So that's what we're committing to if we...
Correct. And on page 3 of the board packet, it's broken out year by year for what the county's costs are and the federal share. The federal share is. So while it's a small cost the first year, 2014 and 15, it increases significantly after that, and then it starts to decrease towards the end.
Any other comments, questions? Rita?
Captain Macedo, I did send some questions or concerns to the sheriff, and one of the things the board was interested in is there was any other kind of funding that could be used, because I think there's support for the concept of having SROs. And so one of my questions had been, could we not dedicate some of the AB 443 funds to this? Under the grant, if I remember, you will not be seeking a contract with, in our case, it would have been the City of Angels. So the staff report says you're going to be doing Mark Twain, Bret Hart, Falacito, all which are under the jurisdiction of the Angels PD. So is the City of Angels or the Angels PD not going to pay in any way, and yet the grant and the general fund will be paying for the SROs on the City of Angels, on the schools within the Angels PD's jurisdiction? Also, the grant stated that you can't implement it till, and I know these are finite, till the effective date of the grant. So, assuming you would probably use, I'm not going to assume, officers that are already experienced, because the grant only pays for entry-level officers. So then you have to have your 3 new officers hired before you can start the grant. What does that then do to the implementation of the grant? And the other thing that I know the schools have safety and emergency procedures, and if I remember the comments from your office last time, the 3rd SRO will be doing emergency planning, so I wasn't sure how that was dovetailing with the emergency plans and safety plans that the schools already have in place, not that they can't be approved upon. So, and the staff report lists 15 schools, but the grant said 19 schools, so I didn't know if there were 4 other schools that were missing from the staff report. And would you be doing SRO work at privately funded schools? I mean, really, I totally support the SRO program. I think we had a wonderful experience with it last time, or the times when we've had it. I just think the grant puts some real restrictions on the program, which all grants do, that the general fund should just fund the SRO program separately, and if the board and the sheriff's office think this is a priority, then if the general fund funds it and uses that general fund contribution that they'd have to do for the grant just to fund it, then you can get rid of the grant and not be limited by the conditions of what the grant is, which is what I think you should do. But that comes up at budget time, and so that's my position on this, besides the questions I had sent the sheriff's office.
I'm sorry I didn't get your questions. The sheriff's out of town on State Sheriff's Association matters. I'll address question number 1 with AB 443. AB 443 funds have already been committed to numerous other budgets that the general fund or other grants used to fund. So I'm incredibly concerned about continuing to commit AB 443 funds to the SRO program. With respect to the City of Angels, and this kind of will answer or tie into question number 3 about 15 schools versus 19. The City of Angels will still handle routine day-to-day service calls at the schools located within the city. However, the schools located in the city have students that live outside of the city limits in the county, and their buses also go outside of the city limits to transport students in. What we don't want to have is a situation where we have certain schools trained one way and other schools trained another way. So our goal for this program for that third school resource officer would be to train all of the schools and all the bus drivers, staff, and students with contemporary school safety measures and response to active shooter or critical incidents. So it would not be beneficial to us or the schools if we neglected a certain number of schools, since we are going around training them countywide. It makes sense for our staff to be trained one way, and it also makes sense for Sheriff's Office staff and for the schools, students, and teachers countywide to be trained a certain way. That way, if there are multiple incidents going on, or should you have staff that's moved from one school to another, which often happens, there's not a loss or a breakdown there. So we would enter into the city and work in conjunction with the police department to train those schools and bus drivers inside the city limits, similar to that of those that, say, in Calaveras Unified or any of the other schools outside of the county.
And that's acceptable to Angels PD?
Yes.
In the schools? The 15 schools versus the 19? I
Correct.
don't know what.
Correct. What had happened is originally some of the schools inside the city had expressed some concern about the same question you had, and then after the grant was submitted, as word got out, we were contacted by other schools, private schools, and schools that weren't funded, saying, hey, we would like to be part of this program. What can you offer? What can you offer us? So we've done some research with that. County Council looked into that. And there's some concern about the grant funding services to private schools. I know it happens elsewhere. Our county council is not comfortable with that. So that's why you see a discrepancy in some numbers. I think that issue will need to be researched a little further if this passes. From a public safety standpoint, I don't like the idea of omitting any schools in the county from these services. I know the grants have restrictions, but there's a certain amount of reasonableness, I think, that needs to be looked at when it comes to responding to schools. And if there is a major incident, we're responding anyway, no matter where it is. So we'll do the cleanup with the grant auditors after, if need be.
So let me just take an example. The schools, as part of their safety emergency programs that they approve, have a position on lockdown. So what you're looking at the SRO doing is making sure that all the schools have the same policy for lockdown?
Well, as far as policies go, I mean, the schools are all obviously going to have their respective policies. What we want to do is look at their policies and provide them with contemporary, up-to-date training. And I mentioned this at the last meeting. The standardized training for critical incidents at school, specifically active shooters, have changed as a result of some of the tragedies that have occurred elsewhere. So some folks have taken a much deeper look at how to prevent those tragedies or how to react and respond to those tragedies. And that situation still continues to change today. So what we would want to do is provide all of the schools with up-to-date information, because if you have a plan in place 6 months ago, it may be stale by now. So that would be the goal. With respect to the new officers being hired and the more seasoned officers going into the school resource officer grant program, you are correct. We don't want to put brand new officers in the program. The grant funding cycle began September 1st, I believe it was, and we weren't notified until September 30th, so we were already behind about 30 days. You are correct. We would be hiring folks first, and our goal was to hire them by January 15th, because it's mid-year and it helps with our budgeting situation. And we would immediately, as soon as those 3 were hired, place 3 seasoned or experienced officers into the schools. They may not all be able to go in at once. It would just depend on how our hiring worked out. And I know I didn't go out line by line, but I think
No,
I answered
that's
some of your other
all right.
questions
Thank
and
you. I mean, there
answered.
were other questions I had, but I think for me, my position is the county or the board should just, at budget time or whatever, say general fund is going to pay for this. So if you need to do flexibility, you're not locked into the 3 years plus 1 year that the grant mandates that the county do.
And if I could offer just a little clarification on what Captain Macedo said, the grant does pay for 75% of an entry-level position.
Correct.
That means as that officer spends more time, they're still only paying for 75% of the entry-level cost, even as the county costs increase. So if you do look at what is laid out on in the staff report, you're talking a greater share of cost each year for the county as it goes on. Over the 3 years of the grant coming in, that $375,000, the grant match is a little over $500,000. But the true county cost for the 4-year period, the 3-year grant period, plus the 12 months that are required to retain those officers, is a total of over $800,000. That doesn't include training, that doesn't include equipment, that is just strictly salary costs. And I feel compelled to remind the board that even though I don't dispute the need for school resource officers, I feel compelled to remind the board that we covered the gap, the deficit gap between our expenditures and our revenue for the 14-15 budget with $4.8 million of one-time cost. Now you're asking to dedicate $800,000 in discretionary general fund revenue over the next 4 years to this specific grant. So for the 370, you have to spend $800,000 at a minimum to receive $375,000. So I feel compelled to remind the board of that issue.
So what would it cost us to have 3 resource officers off the general fund? 4 years.
I provided that at the last meeting, and I'm not sure if I have those notes, but let me do some quick math here real quick.
It was 317 for 1 year. And then it would be at least $1.2 million.
It's roughly 89 to 94,000 per year per officer, depending on their education.
And that's at entry level.
Correct. About 267,000 on the low end.
Per officer?
No, that's for 3 per year. So it's roughly 89,000 to 94,000 per year per deputy.
If we were to just do it on
General fund.
Okay, any other comments or thoughts from the board? Open up for public comment. Supervisors comment?
Yeah, just before we go to public comment, I'd like to just make relay a couple thoughts in the process. You know, we're just as subject to the type and fashion of activities that happen elsewhere here in Calaveras County. A couple of months ago, we had a young individual bring a weapon to school via the bus. It could have been an incredibly horrific nightmare if it had gone south. You know, I don't want to inject anything into it, in my opinion, about what his intentions were, but we can only assume that this is not something that's normal behavior. And these types of things are happening with more and more prevalence. And I can tell you, as being formerly an educator, that having a reserve officer, a resource officer at the campuses puts a mental mindset into the place of those young people who are good individuals for the most part, but could be slightly misguided, shall we say. With the presence of a resource officer on the campus of these schools here in the county, I think there'll be an opportunity for interaction with law enforcement that's healthy, in a way that perhaps some of these issues that could potentially rise up and be catastrophic might be able to be nipped in the bud or resolved in a much less costly way, both fiscally and emotionally, in terms of what it does to our community. Let me give you an example just quickly, and then I'll wrap up and let it go to public comment. I have a personal friend who has a wife and now 4 children, the oldest of which is about ready to go into kindergarten. This gentleman makes about 4 to 5 times the average household income in Calaveras County, and he lived in Wallace Lake Estates. I say lived because he just moved to Lodi and renovated a nice home in the downtown area. Because of the things that were going on at Valley Springs Elementary and other things, he decided that it was just not the type of place that he wanted his 4 young children to go. And that his oldest, who was going into kindergarten this next year, kind of was the catalyst for his thought process. These are the type of things that happen that go unnoticed and under the radar that cause our county a lot of money. Somebody that makes 4 times the average household income spends a lot of money on local businesses, at the lake, at restaurants, other things like that. This isn't a guy that makes, minimum wage. And those type of people do have the ability to have mobility, and they will remove themselves to somewhere else if they find that they feel their safety is in jeopardy. So I'm not saying that we need to do it for the sake of people that make more than average. It benefits everyone from top to bottom of the scale. And, there's no need for someone through training and interaction with law enforcement in a positive way that might avert the innocent victims that may come of, some kind of altercation, as well as the life of that young person who may end up in prison forever. If they had only had perhaps a little bit more interaction with somebody in a positive way, to talk to them about what their opportunities are or resources they could tap into to be able to handle these issues in a more productive way. I think for the safety of our children in the schools, for the safety of our educators, for the safety of our community, both financial and physical well-being, I think that it's money well spent to do this especially. It is a large number, but we're talking about a quarter of it being picked up at least. And I think that perhaps by the time that 3-year window was done, that this board, albeit with my absence, maybe that might be a plus, might be able to creatively come up with some way to make sure that there's funding for that going forward for the 4th year and beyond. Just stop.
Any other board comments? Okay, open this item up for public comments. Any public comments on this item? No.
Marty Crane. I just want to make sure that we all remember, I think we all do remember that we can't possibly forget that we have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of this county, and that I really appreciate all of the discussion and the ideas. There is no disputing the value of having officers in our schools. There is no disputing that. But we have a fiduciary responsibility to the county, and we have our financial experts that we pay good taxpayer dollars to for their salaries, and we have to make sure that we weigh their advice equally with everything else that's being said. If we only had 2 options, I'm thinking that maybe Marita's suggestion is the way to go. But please, we ended up in a huge, I think it was like $8 or $9 million deficit because we didn't heed the advice of our fiscal memory on the board, which was Marita, and our county admin office, and for other reasons maybe as well. But let's not forget how we got there and not repeat some of the same mistakes, and just keep looking for the opportunities to fund this, but heed the advice of our experts. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any additional public comments?
Kathy Gomes, Angels Camp, parent of a high schooler, parent of 3 children who've gone through Mark Twain and Bret Harte. I just have a couple of questions and then some comments. Captain Macedo mentioned that City of Angels PD was contacted and that they were amenable and agreed that our SROs, should this be approved, would work on the bus escape plans. But I'm curious if the discussions covered whether the SROs could be on campus at all at Bret Harte or Mark Twain. I believe the grant was applied for using statistics from a questionnaire that 7th and 8th grade students took, and I am concerned that Mark Twain will not have a SRO on campus, and neither will Bret Harte. My children and myself really feel that the actual, as Supervisor Spellman pointed out, that the presence on campus and at events of an SRO is extremely beneficial, and I am all for that. I am, however, very, very concerned that City of Angels would be left out, not having somebody on campus. And then 2 questions. Will the grant-funded positions be eliminated once the grant period is over? And then the other question is, what will you, supervisors, unfund should you agree to this grant, because the money has to come from somewhere?
Any other public comments? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Any other comments from board? All right. I guess comments or questions. First of all, I think it's a very expensive proposition. I'm going to say $300,000 or so to the $800,000 plus in this particular grant. I don't see funding mechanisms for training and equipment and supplies and things along that line, and those are added costs to this particular program that I'm not sure has been fully taken a look at. The other thing I see to this is that, yes, the money has to come from somewhere. We went through a couple of trying years on the budget, and we made an awful lot of cuts. There was an awful lot of employees who made sacrifices. There was program sacrifices that were made, and we're going to be faced, I think, with even tougher times as we pursue this next budget year in future years. It seems like this grant is a little upside down in regards to funding. We're paying the lion's fair share for this particular grant and getting a little in return, in my opinion. I also take a look at how we look at future funding, if this is something that we want to take a look at the board and pursue it with funding for an SRO type in the school districts is something to pursue. But I also take a look at, as we look at this grant, and I look at the grant application and I look how it was being put forward, and I really would like to see more, input from the schools. We're hearing kind of one side of a situation. I find it interesting that the schools aren't here saying, we really want to have this, we really need to have this, from their perspective where they're coming from. And it would be nice to see a little bit more cooperative efforts between the schools and the county and the sheriff's office in this endeavor. I'm not sure. Are we stepping on their toes? What kind of programs do they have in place? What are they taking a look at? When I also look at the City of Angels, it's like, how are they being a cooperative partner in this relationship? So, we accept this kind of money, and there seems to be all sorts of strings attached. Perhaps the biggest string attached to me that's quite bothersome is the financial commitment. $800,000 is a lot of money, and I see it probably more like 1.2, and perhaps more as we take a look at the next 3 years and take a look at the needs to support this kind of program. And then, I guess on another level, I've had children go through both the Mark Twain and Bret Harte School District and still in the school district, and I find the best complementary program is when Mark Twain and Bret Hart had an SRO. They also utilized other resources to complement that SRO because you can't have an officer on those campuses every day of the week, all day of the week. And I found many times these young kids look towards a particular counselor or other kinds of individuals that represents kind of that school resource kind of position. And those are kinds of things that I look for. It's just having a cop on campus is not going to solve it, and everybody's going to look at that as being solving the problem. And in my opinion, that's not going to solve it. So I can't support this particular grant application. I find it's too costly to the county, and what we've been through in the last couple years and what we're faced with in the next few, I don't think it's something that we can fiscally support without severely damaging and hurting other departments. Any other comments from the board? If not, yes.
Just one last brief comment, and that is that just the perspective from which we view this opportunity. If we view it as somebody who's willing to give us money, but we have to put up the lion's share, doesn't seem like our portion is fairly balanced. I look at it from a standpoint that here's money coming from state or federal means, and they don't have any buy-in to our community other than they have a program that allows for funding for such things. I look at it from a perspective such as if you were to start any new business venture or something like that, and somebody came to you and said, I'm willing to give you 25% of the cost of the operations to open a business for the first 3 years. If you'll guarantee me that you'll be in business for 4 years, I'll give you 25% of your overhead for 3 years to get your feet firmly planted and get a good program in place. And then at that point, we're going to have to take you off the bottle, but we're going to wean you for 3 years, giving you 25% of the program. That's how I see it. I see it as an opportunity. And, we really can't put a price tag on if that kid shows up with a gun and shoots up 10 kids or more or whatever. I mean, how much is it going to cost us then? In lost tourism revenue, in lost, property value revenue, in lawsuits against the county for perhaps things that they did or didn't do. I don't know. I just see it as an opportunity. I'm not particularly thrilled about the cost sharing rubric, but I do see it as an opportunity. And although it seems like a large financial outlay, I think that it's money well spent, and there are places that can be that we can look at to be able to make up the difference when it comes to year 4. I mean, there's got 3 years to get there, so that's just my last word.
Okay. No other comments, Marita?
Captain Macedo, what about the grant says that you have now operating 50 full-time officers that you have that are operating. You have positions that are funded but not filled under the grant. It said 50 and then 7 part-time. What would be the possibility, because again, I hear the board really wanting to do the program, that it become a program and that with having unfilled positions that you could support doing the program, maybe not with 3, but with 2, with at least 1 or 2, and if you feel at some point that there could be, or you would request a contingency draw to help fund the program. Again, it's the program that the board wants. I think it's having our hands tied by the grant that, well, at least 2 of us, I don't know about the other 2, they haven't said anything, but could that not be a possibility, that you take some of your 50 officers that you now have?
So as of last week, we swore in 2 deputy sheriffs, and all of our current vacancies were full. We have 3 deputies in the training program right now. However, with the reduction since the recession, the reduction of deputy sheriffs, we are having a hard time right now just filling our regular beats for our regular shifts. So to take existing staff and put them into schools, it's not realistic. We would actually be taking them out of the neighborhood or the beat that they patrol and putting them into the schools, and that's not realistic. That was one of the reasons we wrote the grant, was specifically to add positions and to dedicate them towards the schools. I'm not confident right now that that's a good decision to take deputies. Matter of fact, I am confident that's a bad decision right now to take deputies out of existing beats and place them into the schools.
Okay, so you have 50 officers now per the grant. I'm just saying. for the
That was
grant.
as of
You have
June.
50
As
yeah,
of June
as
when the
of
grant
June,
was
you have
written,
50.
yes.
So the 2 or 3 that you just hired are part of the now because of some coming in, some going out. You have some positions in the parking lot.
Correct.
So could that not be something that you could take? I know, I can hear it. Like you could take a parking lot position and maybe you just start with one and see about funding at least one SRO through a parking lot position. Again,
That was the board's.
and then it sort of gets going. So then it isn't tied to 3 years or 4 years, because I remember how sad we were when we had to stop the school resource officer when the grant ran out. The question, I don't know who asked, when a grant ends, what happens to the positions? When grants end, positions go. If it is not a grant-funded position, why something that the board could consider?
If that was the board's direction, we would certainly look into that. I would have to consult with the sheriff and the rest of our patrol staff, but absolutely.
All right, no other questions? Comments?
This grant, it says cash match, right? Is it cash, all of it, or is it like, is there some like?
No, it basically is a cash match because it is the county's share of cost for those positions. So that is cash that has to be paid out in salary and benefits.
Okay. So, just in case, it's okay, Jim. Just in case, nobody knows how I feel about resources in the schools. Once again, I took a community walk with about 50 kids from elementary school here in San Andreas, and you're walking down the street with 50 of them, and that particular time, it was not hard to pick out at least 12 of those young children that you could definitely see that they were going to be a part of the program here in the near future. That would cost us money, for sure. What are we spending on behavioral health right now? This year, the portion, we're spending over almost $8 million, somewhere around there, on behavioral health. I mean, shouldn't we be taking steps to try to look into the future and reduce some of the issues that are reoccurring and doubling after that, because we can't break that cycle. There are plenty of opportunities. I also believe that the resource officer, whatever you could say that it doesn't do any good to have that uniformed officer in the schools, but I would argue that if that officer could make friends with some of these kids, then that is a step in the right direction, because a uniformed officer then out on the street isn't as much of a threat or somebody looked upon as trying to hide from or shy away from, because they realize that they are people just like anybody else, and that's what we need to do is get people working together. So, and a lot of the kids that are in the schools right now, they have challenges because maybe the school is the only place that they're actually getting treated properly. And we have a pretty good-sized poverty situation here. We have a lot of impoverished folks that are, we have a lot of drug addiction here, a lot of problems that come with a community that's in poverty. And we'd like to work our way out of it, but if we continue to let the cycle continue as it is, how much is it going to cost us in 4 years for the cycle that's coming? So you have, 10 kids now, or 10 people now in jail. Maybe it's going to be 20 or 30 because we didn't take steps to do something about that and intervene with those kids as they were kids growing up. Maybe we can even 25% success would be huge in not only the community but in dollars in the future for managing that. So I guess what I'm saying is we can make a choice. We can make a choice to continue like we're doing right now and fill that jail, or try to take steps to not fill that jail in the future. That would the way I feel about it. Now, as far as this grant goes, I think it's a pretty expensive grant. There's no doubt about it. Can we afford it? I don't think we could not afford it, to tell you the truth. But I've been advocating for service officers in the schools since I got on this board. I want to see them. I sent an email out at the beginning of the year to county council or to CAO's office, to Mary Zwicky's office, the school, and the sheriff to try to come up with a share in resources to put some service officers in place. And we haven't been able to do that. I like the idea of what Marita said about maybe taking a parking lot position and start there and train somebody and get them out there. And if we can, increase that for the next year and the next year after that until we can see some good results, then I kind of like that as well. But we would have to have the commitment of the board to do that. And I don't feel like I just don't think that we can continue to go the way we're doing and not get more expensive on the other end. We're going to be spending way more than $880,000 in 4 years on incarceration if we don't try to intervene now. So.
Is that a motion?
No.
Supervisor Wright, did you have any questions or thoughts, comments? Okay, I'll call for a motion on item number 9. I'm sorry, public comments. I did before.
That's all right.
Go ahead, Al.
Al Segala, Taxpayer Association. I think I mentioned the last time this came before the board. I'm not sure how close we want to get to the Federal Justice Department. I'm thinking about Fast and Furious and about that department being used for things that it's not should be used for. If we accept money from that organization, there's a good chance that we wouldn't suffer any negative consequences, but there's a possibility, and it reduce our ability perhaps to control the outcomes of federal policy as it affects us locally. However, Cliff had some very good points. We do need better communication between the police, particularly the officers on the street, and our school kids, and especially high school, but it could also be grade school as well. And there might be a possibility, maybe not using grant money, but by increasing the budget a little bit to bring another officer on board, where it could be rotated, where actual sheriff deputies could learn a little bit about the schools and about protection of the schools, and rotate where one one officer would cover the schools for a certain month and go back on the beat, and then another one would do this likewise until all the schools are covered at least once a year. Now that makes a lot of sense, and that would improve the and also the kids may have some ideas on what they think, what their feedback is on the sheriffs, and but that classroom communication between a sheriff's officer and the kids, I think, is just bottom line. We got to do that. But as for the federal government involvement, that's a different story. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, I can appreciate and respect all the concerns but expressed. But saying there's no money, I agree with you. And the next item on this agenda, you're going to see why not. Okay? What disappointing is, what are people from the school? I mean, they should have, next to the parents, a larger stake in it. I know they are not exactly doing very well financially, but attendance dropping, well, somebody's going to have to bear some responsibility for it. The attendance in the schools are dropping, while charter schools are a waiting list. So it's a lot bigger than just what we can. I mean, I can see it, and I fully support and understand it. But you're going to have to take a look at the lot of it. Bigger picture, not just this county, but this whole state, what's going on here. People putting a lot of money into it, into schools. And the school security has been an issue for many other items in the 5th District and etc. But until we hold parents responsible for their kids, if a kid screws up, they're going to have a choice. Either put the kids behind the bars or the parents will go to the bars. And there's no parents' responsibility over here. Security in the school is very needed. We had a meeting over 4 years ago, because if the manure is going to hit the fan, and you never know where it's going to be, they're going to take it the weakest point somebody can have. And unless you have an armed peace officer, I don't know if it's sponsored by the school or the Board of Supervisors, you can scream bloody hell. Nobody's going to take the responsibility for it. You're not going to do it, the school's not going to do it, and the parents not going to do it. And they're all going to say somebody should have done it. And I agree with you. This should be financed. Either this present board or the next board. You're going to have to find the money. But you got to do due diligence to save those kids, try to save those kids. A lot of parents fail to do their responsibility, and there's no consequences to it. So I would very much like to see this board find the money. And I'd be more than happy to come up with some ideas to down the road. You can look like, hey, this is awful. But let's take a look at where the money goes now. And what is the priority? What is the priority of the constituents? It's the cops, the fire, and the roads. Then everything else is secondary. The kids are, but what we're talking about here is security. Find the money. I'd be more than happy to help to give you a couple of suggestions where you can save some money. And you know damn well there's plenty of it. Thank you.
Money. I know the Sheriff's Department has a volunteer program. I would assume a volunteer sheriff would be much happier sitting around a bunch of kids, interacting with teenagers, than sitting in an office, filing or whatever the volunteer officers do at this time. And we're talking about taking money out of the general fund. And once again, I'm asking for some equity, for some fairness for a group of people that have not had a pay raise in years, and you want to create more programs on top of an already strapped budget, this may not be the time. It's a good idea, but I think a volunteer effort may answer the question, may address the problem, and I think having a presence, a uniformed officer on campus, whether they're carrying a gun, whether they're active or they're volunteer, would have an impact on whatever shenanigans is being planned on a campus. But to take $800,000 out of an already strapped budget when there's programs that have not received any funding, to me seems counterproductive. Just my opinion. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Detective DiBasilio with the Sheriff's Office. As Marita knows, I was a school resource officer for about 4 years in this county. The resource officer position is very important to these kids. As a resource officer, you gain a lot of respect for law enforcement from the kids. A lot of the kids that I talked with and dealt with when I was a resource officer have now become adults. And I still talk to them. I still see them. I agree with this young lady in the fact that volunteers at the schools is not a bad idea, but having an officer there is different. As you know, people deal with law enforcement differently than they do with just a person, even a person in uniform. A fireman gets respect, but it's a different type of respect that you get as an officer. With what's going on in the schools now, we just had a 7-year-old kid committed suicide because of being bullied. That wasn't, a couple days ago, or even yesterday. I dealt with the bullying. I used to give classes on bullying to the students. It's very important. I know it's a lot of money. I know the county is strapped for funds, and I understand that. But if you don't want to put our kids' futures ahead of some other priorities, I think that's a mistake, because it does benefit the kids immensely. Like I said, I was a resource officer for 4 years, and you can't put a price on kids' safety. We've been lucky in this school district, and on the other side, for the whole county. When I was a resource officer, Dennis Downham, the sheriff then, the grant ended. We had a 4-year grant, and it ended. And I took over the last year of the grant. And he continued me in that position for 4 years, and then one other person beyond that to assist with the kids in the schools. So we covered both sides. I covered 17 schools in the county. The only 2 schools I didn't cover was Mark Twain and Bret Harte, because they had their own school resource officer at the time. I got to know all the kids. You talk to any of the kids nowadays, Marita, you know, they say, hey, Deputy Rick. Back then, we didn't have Facebook. We had MySpace. I used to get all kinds of information on MySpace because they would tell me stuff in confidence. I've gotten a paintball gun that somebody thought was a shotgun off of school grounds. I used to get drugs from the kids off of school grounds because of those types of things. The past 4 years, the schools have gotten out of control. Having an officer on the school grounds makes a huge difference. And I can tell you that from experience because I was on the school grounds. We need the school resource officers. I would please hope that you would vote to put those officers in those positions because it affects our kids. It's huge. Thank you.
George Fry. I've been listening to all of the conversation here, listened to the board members. I had the fortunate opportunity to be a parole agent for the California Youth Authority. I worked on the streets. I worked with kids from the ages of 12 to 25. Yeah, 25-year-old, they are kids, the ones I worked with. I absolutely agree with Cliff in terms of walking into a classroom when I was working. I could walk into a first or second grade classroom and pick out the kids that were going to be the delinquents later on in life. You can just tell by their behaviors. And unfortunately, everybody else is being the parent except the parent. And that's the reason why we have so many problems in that area. I absolutely agree with Marita in terms of let's at least get one officer and see and get that person out there in the schools. I likewise am disappointed that we haven't heard from the schools. I've served on 2 different school boards, and I find it surprising that we have not heard back from the schools. I know that there's, they have the whole budget crisis going on in schools, but I would support, and hopefully you would support, at least hiring one. I think that what the chair, Ms. Pawnee, has said is way too expensive, and I absolutely agree. You're probably closer to the mark of 1.2 or 3 million when you talk about all the supplies and the materials and whatever else. So it reminds me of something that I fostered when I worked in the parole office in Bakersfield. I had a hard time getting the parolees to go to school to finish their education, high school education. So I approached my boss and said, why don't we open a classroom right in the parole office? And we got funding from the superintendent of schools through average daily attendance. And you know that we set up 2 classes, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. Those kids were never absent for class. They wanted to go to school, but they had nothing in common with the rest of the high school kids in the community. And that program really worked. And I agree with the resource officer. Just having somebody out there, and having somebody that's positive, because there may not be any other positive person in their life. So I urge you to at least hire one SRO.
Okay.
Joe Kelly, the SRO program, I think we're missing the big picture here. Not that I don't think it is important, because it is very important. The cost is also very important. But what kind of is bothering me, and while I was sitting here listening, especially when the deputy was talking about it, I started laying out a few facts that I have witnessed myself. SROs start out. We're now talking about, and we don't have, as been said, the schools have not, there's no discussion from the schools. This discussion needs to go much further. It needs not only through the sheriff's department and the county, you folks right now, it needs to pick up probation, needs to pick up the schools and the courts, so that we have a full understanding of what's going on. We don't know what juveniles might be going through the court system right now. And if that court system is overwhelmed, that might then look to go through the probation department to have a diversion program. An SRO and a diversion program works real well. I've seen it. I've participated in it. Not only as a father of a son that was in it, but as a person that actually wound up running a diversion program for a year with San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Department. And what I found with that was, under the way they had it set up, they had college students coming in as interns. Well, once I was able to become involved in it, which normally it's always very hard for me to become involved in anything, it required full time. It required on call. It required me being able to tell the deputies, you got a problem, call me. I'll take care of it. That's what is needed. So you folks are just taking little steps. Go and look at the big picture. Postpone this, continue this. Look at the big picture as quick as you can. to get everybody involved in it and then go forward. The money situation is tough. And yeah, we're all feeling the pain, and we all realize the county's feeling the pain too. But there's another issue coming up right down next door to this thing is pay raises. So please, get the courts, sheriff's office, probation, courts, you, the county, the schools involved. And then we know who's prepared to do what, how they can all work and interface and get this thing to be the best, not just a piecemeal application. Piecemeal application would work. The SRO is good, but it's going to require one for each school. Thank you.
Okay.
Real quickly, I just want to reiterate on what he said. We do have the courts involved. We do have probation involved. It's called the School Attendance Review Board. That is done. The courts are involved in part of that. So that is in place. It's just not being very well activated because we don't have the SRO to assist in that. Truancy is huge in this county. An SRO can help resolve that. That can help the school district. It's a benefit all the way around.
All right.
Again, I go
Marita
back
has
to a
a-
possible recommendation that I don't think that having this grant and funding this grant is in the best interest of the county's, of the overall financial responsibility. But the options, I mean, Detective DeVasilia was an awesome school resource officer, and I normally don't give strokes to the sheriffs very often, but he was very good and quite a role model. But again, I go back to one, if the board thinks this is a priority, is general funding. Maybe you start with funding one SRO from the parking lot. The other is the grant stated that the sheriff's office would use private sources and donations. So maybe that would be dedicated. So again, if you're still going to use private sources and donations as part of the funding, that maybe you can still use that, but it would be a donation to the SRO program. So there's a funding option that didn't say how much you were going to get from private sources and donations, but I'm assuming you had some figure in mind. And there's other venues, and Supervisor Edson had talked about them at the last meeting, and getting other community groups. But I mean, you have to remember, our community groups, I've heard it in this boardroom before, are being tapped to help fund programs and other things. So again, if this is a priority, then let the sheriff's office, working with the administrative office, come with a proposal for this program using possibly a parking lot position, and what the expectations would be for funding from the general fund, from private sources and donations, possibly the school, possibly the City of Angels, the private schools, however they want to frame it, but there has to be a commitment. Because when you approve it, you have to remember, if the commitment isn't met, the general fund is going to pick that up. So, and then see how it goes, and when you get budget, then you can look at doing a second officer or whatever the priorities are of the board and the sheriff's office.
Okay. No further comments from the board. I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve the request for entering into an agreement for grant funding, with the idea and obligation that we would obviously be obligated to those funds, but that we would use the 3 years, the 3-year window that we have to forge alliances with the school districts, the district attorney's office, the courts, whatever, to find how we could make it financially more feasible for the county for the years that go beyond the 3 years where we have the 25% match. I think that, from what I've heard is, it all comes down to people's concerns about budgetary.
So your motion is in regards to 1, 2, and 3, making a motion to support? Okay, is there a second to that motion? Okay, item dies for lack of a second. Any other motion to consider? All right. Item passes for lack of a motion.
Item dies.
Well,
Or is denied.
denies. Guess dies isn't the right word. Item is denied for lack of a motion. Item number 10.
Can we take a 5-minute break to fix the audio?
Okay, we need to take a 5-minute break to fix the audio. So 5-minute break and we'll reconvene to address item number 10. To reconvene after our break.
You can convince Rita to step up here. There we go. There we go. We got 3.
Now we got 4. Okay, it's been brought to my attention that the audio is not working well, and so those beyond the boardroom here are unable to hear this broadcast, and Tech Services is working on it. Meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and pursue our agenda items and make effort to contact those who have an item on the agenda to be present. So we're on item number 10, coming from the Administrative Office, introduce after a waiver of the reading requirements an ordinance amending Ordinance 3019, adopting changes consistent with the new MOU with Service Employees International Union, Local 1020, for the Board of Supervisors. And Shirley, I'll divert to you on this item.
Thank you, Chair Pomke. In January of 2013, the board approved MOUs with our bargaining units, Sheriff's Management, the BSA, and the main one, SEIU. And at the same time, they passed resolutions and ordinances that mirrored what was agreed to under the SEIU Memorandum of Understanding. Historically within the county, both the unrepresented groups and the elected officials, appointed department heads, and the board has followed what was agreed to in SEIU's MOUs. Ordinance 3019, adopted in January 2013, followed that normal process. However, there was a clerical error in the ordinance, and it was discovered as HR started to get ready for the COLA that would occur in January of 2015. At that time, it was discovered that in the Ordinance 3019 for the Board of Supervisors, there was an error for that third-year COLA. Instead of the 4% as included in the MOU, it was only 2.5. And this ordinance that we're introducing today will correct that error. Additionally, there was an error in the amount for health benefits for employee only. It was off by a penny. It said $511.75. It should have been 76 cents. So the ordinance corrects those two items to be reflective of the MOU that was agreed to back in January of 2013.
Okay. So a clerical error, more or less. This is something that the MOU was agreeable to, and we signed off on it. So a clerical error in regards to the
compensation for the board.
Compensation.
That follows that MOU.
All right. And how about budget-wise? Is this included in the budget?
It is. Fiscal year 14-15 budget includes the 4% COLA for all county employees, including elected officials and the Board of Supervisors. We did not realize that this error had occurred back in 2013 until it was brought to our attention. We had just assumed and budgeted for the 4% COLA.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions or comments from board on this item? Okay, any public comments on this item?
Al Segal, Taxpayer Association. I don't know if this can happen or not, but we're not agreeable to some of these agreements that the Board of Supervisors is making with the unions. And we feel powerless, nothing we can do. It's done almost like in the dead of night, and we find out the results later. If it's possible, we'd like you to consider in any agreements you make with the labor unions that they would be finalized in a public meeting after the public is able to see it and comment on it. This would be more democratic and more fair to the taxpayers. Thank you.
Mr. Segala, we do that. We do that. The agreements
These
are
agreements-
public. They are approved in a public forum. Thank you, whoever gave me that word.
It is my understanding that you make the agreement, and then it's final. You've made the agreement with the unions, and it's final. You do hold a meeting that displays what those agreements are, but that agreement is not subject to the approval of the public or that meeting. In other words, I don't think there's anything in writing in those agreements that say that this will be considered in a public meeting, and if approved at that time, would go into effect. It is finalized, and then it's merely ratified at the Board of Supervisors meeting. Am I correct?
The board could choose not to ratify the agreement. You have the opportunity to comment on any agreement that comes before the board. So if you made a comment and think that the employees of Calaveras don't deserve in any way a raise, for whatever reason, doesn't financial or you're mad at us that day or whatever.
We might want to increase their pay.
You can do that, and it's the same, with electeds or with the DSA. They are ratified in public, and the public has the right to see them, the same as you see our agenda now. And so that is a public process. And for the electives, it doesn't take effect for 30 days after ratification. And for the Board of Supervisors, it takes effect 60 days after the ratification. So there is opportunity for the public to comment on our agreements with whether it's a deputy sheriff or whether it's SEIU or electeds or Board of Supervisors. I mean, I understand that. The negotiations are done outside of the boardroom. They are done with the board's labor negotiator and the unions.
Okay, thank you, Marita. And also, thank you for your many years of service.
Additional public comments?
Did you want to say something? I don't see the chair recognize. You had something to say.
I just wanted to clarify, if the chair would like, all labor negotiations are, it's a closed session item. It is pursuant to the Brown Act as well to be confidential and in closed session with the union. But after negotiations occur, then the ultimate contract does come forward, is open, before it is ultimately entered into, like Ms. Calloway indicated. But the actual negotiation is a closed session item. So it's a confidential negotiation between the county and the labor unions.
My name is Peter Race from Jenny Lynn. I'm just a dumb foreigner. I know nothing about it, but to me it looks kind of fishy to me. The Board of Supervisors have a little discussion with the national organization of representing the labor, and whatever the conclusions they come to, like what this one is, I believe it's talk about 4-point-some% living cost increase each year. You can correct me on the numbers. And it's very nice because the 14% unemployment we have in this county and unmentioned labor participation we have in this county is pathetic. But the principals involved, they're going to get a cost of living increase. It's a nice way to say you get a 4-point-some% pay increase because you did such a good job. What really ticks me off is that for whatever those distinguished supervisors decide to negotiate for, this also affects their own appreciation in financially. So that's one of the issues I'm talking about that maybe should be looked at. Fully believe that they should get exactly what they accomplished, not what they're hoping for. But there is a little racket going on here, folks, at the expense of the taxpayers. Because for the past many years, the elected official, if you put it in front of the people, they do not earn or deserve a cost of living increase. Now, I know it's Mickey Mouse compared to what like Contra Costa County does. They wanted a 30% pay increase. But we don't have an oil refinery to finance it. The people up in Sacramento, they got a 5-point-some living cost increase, inflation cost increase. And the two groups that, let's put it this way, not exactly involved in this whole thing, that mostly affected, because from my perspective, and I have a few relatives are involved what the labor organization is, they don't have much say so. Ask that young lady over there. And the taxpayers don't get much involved in this thing. And to me, just a dumb foreigner, there should be a little bit of conflict of interest, or appearance of a conflict of interest. When whoever is on a board, and we can go back to the names that made the negotiation, also going to be affected whatever they negotiate. So to me, just from, just an ignorant, a little slimy, folks. And you know it, and maybe people should realize how many of the veterans get a 4.1 living cost increase, folks? Your constituents. How many of your constituents who are on Social Security get a 4.1 living cost increase? What the hell did a past supervisor get to deserve a 4.1 pay increase? Thank you.
If I may, Chair Ponte, the agreements that were reached with the MIU in January of 2013 were after a number of one-year contracts with all the bargaining units where employees made concessions, where they agreed to give up certain things. When we entered into and negotiated the contracts in 2013, starting that January, the first 2 years, the 2.5% COLAs were offset by the employees making and paying 2% of their PERS contribution. This COLA that's going into effect in January of 2015, the 4% increase, is the first true COLA where there is not an offset of the employees paying more. So I just wanted to clarify that. Also, again, the same held true for your non-represented employees, your appointed department heads, and your elected officials. So I just wanted to clarify that.
I had a question about the process. The union and the county reps negotiate an agreement. It's come before the public. I mean, it would come before the public, and we would have a chance to comment on it or approve it or criticize it. How much impact would that have on you folks as far as deciding if a bunch of people were angry about it when you know something's already been worked out? See, I understand what Al's saying. It's saying like it's already, in the works. This is just a formality that, it's not really going to impact anything. So the question is, how much impact would the public have on a already agreed agreement? And then it also goes to say, when we have our advisory committees and we come in, maybe if we ever came and talked to you, how much impact would it have on you folks? Maybe you folks already have your ideas set in stone, or you've come with your own agenda, and therefore you're not open and listening to what the public might say. And I think that's probably what our concern is, that maybe decisions are made without the input or the critique of the public, the taxpayers, the ones that are going to be supporting all of the decisions that you make. That would be my only question. Thank you.
Joe Kelly, I agree with what Peter said, agree with what Bonnie said, what Elle said. So it's kind of confusing to me. I've talked to a number of county employees, and they were all expecting a 2.5. Now, it was just brought up that this is the first time they'll be looking at 4% without something having an effect on it. But doesn't the insurance increases come through at the same time that they get that? So in reality, if that insurance increase is taking 1.5%, they're really going to get a 2.5% raise. There we go. Thank you. So let's see. Social Security, 1.7% raise. CalPERS, $198 billion underfunded. So how long can the county financially survive additional COLAs without doing something about it? In other words, when we, the taxpayers, feel the pain and think got us in a position where we'll vote for a county tax. The basis for an increase was, I think, answered of the concessions, which I admire them for doing that, and it was a good thing they did. Otherwise, it probably would have really harmed the troops, the people that do the grunt work around here, being laid off. As to Ms. Callaway's thing of public scrutiny, it's at the time of the public hearing where we're able to scrutinize it. I just find that not right. I'd like to see the Board of Supervisors separated out of this and figure out some other way to figure through a citizens committee as to what the supervisors for a pay raise are worth. Because it still lacks to me, and I would hope since next meeting is going to be the last meeting of the year, that you folks will go through and discuss with us so we could appreciate what you have done or have not done. Everything you've done in either your 2 years or your 4 years. It would be appreciated. So with that, thank you.
So, Shirley, if I'm correct, it would not just be the board, it's all elected. You cannot treat one group separate from another.
That's right.
So, any increase or no increase or whatever you do for the Board of Supervisors applies to all electeds within Calaveras. So it'd be the auditor, the only one who separated out was the sheriff, because he's tied to the DSA, if I remember. So the auditor, the assessor, the recorder, you can't treat them separately from the Board of Supervisors.
Actually, earlier, a number of years ago, I forget exactly what year it was, I forwarded the copy of the ordinance to Supervisor Spellman at his request. The board salaries were tied to the average of the sheriff, the assessor, the treasurer tax collector.
All of them minus highest lowest.
No, it was everybody except for the district attorney, basically.
Oh,
and it was the and the coroner in the in the coroner. So it was the assessor, the auditor controller, treasurer tax collector, and the clerk recorder, and the sheriff, and it was the average of theirs.
Correct.
And as it went through, and the following ordinance then tied it to the MOUs as negotiated, and that superseded the prior ordinance. So at one point in time, the board salaries were tied to the other elected officials. That it has then just from that point on, each ordinance was tied to the increases or the salary and benefits that were negotiated with SEIU.
Right, I understand that, but I thought the question is, you can't separate out a group. So you can't say we're going to treat the Board of Supervisors percentage-wise. If you give the board 4% or 2%, that's the same percentage you're going to be giving all the other electeds. I didn't think under the government code not county code, but the state government code, you can't separate out, because a lot of supervisors, they're tied to the judges' salaries, and we discussed it here, how we were going to pay, what the supervisors' pay was going to be tied to. And we did it to all the electeds minus highest and lowest, and whatever percentage we gave SEIU is the percentage that went to all electeds and department heads. But you can't separate out one elected group from another.
Quite honestly, I'm not familiar. I did ask for the attorney who typically handles labor negotiations and HR matters to come over if he is available. I'm hoping that he is, and that he would be able to answer that question, because I'm not familiar with that area of the government code to be able to feel comfortable to answer that at this point.
Mr. Kelly's alluding to that.
Okay.
If I may enter into the fray again, it's odd. For 26 years, I lived in Calaveras, or in San Luis Obispo County, pardon me. I hope never for 26 years here. Want to move on. 26 years in San Luis Obispo County, the Board of Supervisors weren't tied to anybody's. They actually had a committee that would recommend or whatever, what they might want as. The Board of Supervisors down there went for many a year without a raise. Then they came out and went for a 19-point-something% pay raise. One supervisor, after they voted it in, he came back and said, "My mama told me not to do that." It was a little late, but he got chastised pretty darn good. So I would say that somewhere, either they were acting illegally from what you're saying, or you have that opportunity to separate yourselves out and come before the people or before this board and just have a discussion of a pay raise for yourselves, and then let the people discuss it. So there's where I'm coming from. It's something I have seen and witnessed. Thank you.
So I'm going to bring it back to our item number 10, where we have the introduction after waiver of the reading requirements in ordinance of 33019, because we can go off the trail here and not be able to resolve anything, and appreciate the comments and take all of those into consideration. But for today's business, we have this particular ordinance. So are there any public comments in regards to this particular ordinance? All right, seeing none. Is there any further comments from the board?
Yeah.
Yes, Supervisor Spellman.
I'd like to say that I'm very offended by some of the statements that were made. One in particular that said that we knew inherently that we were slimy. I'm sorry, but that's very offensive and very it undermines what the whole purpose for why we're here, for people to come in and speak in that tone, in those type of terms. It's just and it's just not appropriate for this chamber. Now, what I would like to say in regards to that is that I've said it before, and I'll say it again as many times as need to be said, that there's a lot of people who are on, they have the perspective of the gentleman, well, we'll call him gentleman for today, that accuse us of being slimy. There's a lot of people that share his perspective, and those people are screaming and ranting that Congress, our federal legislators, that there should be a new constitutional amendment that says that all congressmen Congress people can create no laws that they're not subject to. In other words, if everybody else has to have national health care, so do they. They don't get a different plan or anything like that. I hear that all the time. Well, this particular policy and procedure that we have instituted here in Calaveras County many years ago addresses that very same issue. The people that are elected up here and seated as the representatives, the Board of Supervisors that represent the citizens of this county, do not get more or less than any of the other county employees that work here for the county. Whether you're working in the road department or the legal department or anybody that's represented by SEIU, the Board of Supervisors gets the same increase or decrease. If we decide that there needs to be a decrease or a freeze or whatever, we get a decrease or a freeze. And so in that way, it completely addresses exactly what you're talking about in terms of a grander scale, that there needs to be some responsibility. We can't just give ourselves a 19% raise as Mr. Kelly was talking about, somebody did in a different county. We can't give ourselves a 19% raise without giving all of the SEIU 1021 members a 19% raise. And that's why it's written as such, so it's fair. We have to live by and toe the mark just as they do. There's no special treatment for us as elected officials. We can't step out and give ourselves an increase or any other thing more than anybody else gets. And I think that this county is very fair and very ahead of the curve, politically speaking, in terms of fairness for our county employees. And, I take a strong offense to somebody suggesting anything otherwise.
Okay.
And if I may, I just want to remind everybody that this wasn't an agreement that was entered into 3 years ago. It's a standing agreement.
Yeah.
It was the intent of the board to follow that agreement, and this is just to correct the clerical error that was included in that resolution.
Yeah, and I'd like to just say it is, it's a larger, obviously bigger issue than what is before us today in the agenda, so I think we should this is just a cleanup exercise. So I think we'll just go ahead and approve this now and move to the next agenda item. So in that vein, I will recommend I make a motion for approval.
I make a second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Spellman, to introduce, after waiver of the reading requirements, an ordinance amending Ordinance 3019, adopting changes consistent with the new MOU with Service Employees International Union, Local 1021, for the Board of Supervisors. Any further comments or questions from the board? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item number 11 from Public Works, approve amendment number 1 to the subrecipient agreement approved July 29, 2014 between Calaveras County and the Calaveras Council of Governments for the Public Transportation Modernization Improvement and Service Enhancement Account. Good morning, Deborah.
Good morning. Deborah Mullen from Public Works. This item is to amend the subrecipient agreement between the county and the Council of Governments, but it makes no changes in the provisions of the agreement itself. It only substitutes the exhibit, that is the list of projects that was in place at the time that the subrecipient agreement was approved, with the list of projects that you approved in October. So this is really a combination of items that have been approved, just bringing it together in one piece so that we can submit the allocation request to the state to get these projects funded.
Okay. And this, any questions from the board on this item? Any public comments on this item?
Is you folks all familiar with this issue as far as is any strings attached to this grant? Or is it all the strings attached to this is going to be handled by CCOG?
This is
Are
a
they going to
program.
notifying you? Are you familiar with it? You read it?
This is a program that's already in the works and many projects in the works, and this is an opportunity to pull it together and be able to submit to the state for reimbursement.
Okay, fine. I just wondered if there's any strings attached to it. And also, I'd like to make a comment, since it was made after public comment. SIU employee, they're going to get laid off when there's not enough money. Does any of the executive branch of this county gets laid off when there's not enough money?
Mr. Race, I can appreciate your comments, but we are in item number 11 with Public Works. At
But
this point.
there was some more comments from the board.
There always will be. Right now,
Okay.
we're on item number 11 for Public Works.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I'll make my plan.
Any other
Comments on
comments on item number 11? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion from the board.
I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
I have a motion by Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Edson, to approve amendment number 1 to the subrecipient agreement approved July 29, 2014 between the Calaveras County and the Calaveras Council of Governments for the Public Transportation Modernization Improvement and Service Enhancement Account. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item number 12, brought to us from the sheriff, approve a blanket purchase order with Cisco of Central California in the amount of $126,750, and Ted's Food Service, California, in the amount of $126,750 for the aggregate of, I guess, total of both vendors, not to exceed this particular amount for fiscal year 2014-15.
There you go.
Ballard? Hello.
Well, good afternoon, everybody.
No,
Basically,
it's still good morning.
Well, still good morning. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Depends on what time you get up.
Yes.
So this is kind of consistent with what happened last year. This year we budgeted a little over $126,000. Each time we reach a maximum or $50,000 for a vendor, it's that threshold where we have to get this blanket purchase order. Staff has been trying to get additional vendors to give us better deals. We're still in a kind of a geographical area where maximum pallets versus minimum pallets what we can do. And I know $126,000 and what we do is a lot, for feeding inmates, but I do want to let the board know, we've been open for 6 months and currently we've served 46,155 meals at $1.30 a meal just for the food costs. So staff is doing everything they can in order to keep the costs down but still comply with Title 15. However, we need to pay the bills if we exceed that $50,000 threshold to an individual vendor.
Any comments or thoughts from the board?
I'm assuming there's some kind of California law that prevents us from doing bologna sandwiches or PB&J like they do in Arizona.
I will tell you, I will never serve green bologna. But what we have been doing since the recession started is a lot of bologna sandwiches, a lot of peanut butter sandwiches, and down to the bare minimum right now in Title 15 is in providing hot food items. I mean, the inmates are receiving 2 cold meals per day, sometimes only 1 hot food item, in order for us to try to stay within budget and still meet the minimum requirements of the law. So they are eating a lot of peanut butter sandwiches.
I mean, I eat peanut butter sandwiches.
I like them.
Microwave burritos, I mean, those are fine.
Yeah.
I eat those too.
Supervisor Calaveras?
Captain Ballard, is this is a not to exceed, whatever it is, 126,000. Is that on top of what's already been spent? I mean, because you're going over the 50,000.
No, it's the total budgeted amount. We're not going to exceed that, but we're going to meet that threshold with one or the other of $50,000 coming up, and we have
This is similar
to.
to what we did for public works
Right.
on asphalt, because it was over 50,000. Got it.
Yes.
So this is your blanket.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any public comments on this item?
I'm glad they can afford peanut butter. Congratulations to them. But as long as we're on the vendors, I had a question, because there was a question raised up about the health care for the inmates, because I believe we're still getting health care vendors from out of the county. Has there been any more discussion with the hospital across the street to give that health care so it would stay in the county? You talk about quite a bit of money. That's a vendor.
I would agree. This item, though, we're talking about food.
And vendors. And
Food-
health.
No, food vendors.
Food vendors.
Food
I'm sorry,
vendors.
who's the chair, ma'am? Is it Callaway or you, ma'am?
I am the chair.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
So we're talking about food vendors, and what's on the item is to consider the amount of $126,750 to be spent between the Cisco and the TED food vendor. So it allows staff, that's the amount of money that's been budgeted. They won't go over that per this
But I'm looking at it as a
purchase order.
As a constituents, it would be nice to know if you can cut money back, so give it more than peanut butter jellies, if there's some, the health care could be negotiated better, because that does affect the jail and does affect the health. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think that's being considered, but today we're talking about food, which if we don't eat well, then we will have higher health care costs. Captain Ballard, did you have another statement? I have another public comment. I didn't know if
I'm
you
sorry.
had. That's okay.
I'm sorry.
Joe Kelly. Thank you, Mr. Spellman. You kind of brought up what I wanted to talk about, and Captain Ballard answered pretty much everything I wanted to know. Bologna, peanut butter. I didn't catch the third item, but how much food is actually thrown away? Wasted. They either don't eat it or only eat a part of it and then throw it away. Thank you.
I can't give a quantitative on that. What I can tell you is that we do everything we can not to throw away food. A matter of fact, my cook goes and gets the expired bread from the bread thing when we need bread, and we bring it in and give it to them. To my knowledge, this year I threw away, I don't know, half a dozen boxes of pears that we received that were completely rotten, but they did a reimbursement on it. The other stuff we throw away is food items. It's just what scraps, if there is, left on the inmate plates. Everything else is recycled into soup. You know, she'll make soup out of it if she has extra meats or something like that. So we're doing everything we can to be good stewards of the county's money.
So did I hear your inmate cost per meal per day is $1.30?
As of right now, it's $1.30 per meal, food costs only.
Okay.
So you talked about minimum orders, pellets. Cisco has that, but Ted's doesn't.
No. And still, you know, we try to do who's giving us the best deal, who we're going to order the most from, and it depends whether it's going to be Ted's or is somebody else.
Cisco.
No. He's asking if they full pallets is what you said. Is what
minimum order.
No, okay.
We're not required by either company to have a minimum order. The companies we checked into that service the large jails in Sacramento, they require minimums. And what happens is we have the room to store it, but a lot of it is food that will go bad, so we can't use it before we have to throw it.
Right.
So it's not.
Yeah, I'm pretty aware of minimum orders, and you know, used to be, I don't know, maybe Cisco changed their policy, but they had a $600 minimum order before.
Well, one of the things that we've found now that we're using a second and a third, we actually have a third one out there. We don't do a lot with them because they can't compete a lot. Is that Cisco has become very competitive because we have cut the amount of money we've spent with them in half. So.
Okay.
Sorry for misunderstanding. That's okay.
Any additional public comments? All right, I'll bring it back to the board for a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
I have a motion by Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Spellman, to approve a blanket purchase order with Cisco of California and Ted's Food Service not to exceed the amount of $126,750. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item number 13, from the Administrative Office, approve a plan of cooperation and workstation sublease agreement between Calaveras County and Central Sierra Child Support Agency for the period of July 1, 2014 through June 30th, 2017, and authorize the County Administrative Officer to sign the workstation sublease agreement. Good morning, Mary Rose.
Hi, Mary Rose Ruticonga with the Administrative Office. The item before you is to approve a plan of cooperation and a workstation sublease agreement with the county and the Central Sierra Child Support Agency. The Central Sierra Child Support Agency is a joint powers authority, and their responsibilities are to provide child support services on behalf of Calaveras, Amador, and Alpine County. The plan of cooperation is an agreement for the county to contract services with the Central Sierra Child Support Agency, and those services, those government services, include a lease of workstations, and that is at the Health and Human Service Agency. The county actually leases that building, so this is a sublease agreement. The owner and landlord has agreed to sublease that space. The amount of the sublease is $728.49 per month. Also, the Central Sierra will also pay $205.45 in utilities. Those costs completely cover the cost that the county pays for the leasing of that building. The lease agreement also requires a 3% increase per year. That is consistent with the lease entered into by the county for that space at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on this item? from the board? Any public comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board.
Make the motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Callaway, to approve a plan of cooperation and workstation sublease agreement between the Calaveras County Central Sierra Child Support Agency for the period of July 1, 2014 through June 30th, 2017, and authorize the county administrative officer to sign the workstation sublease agreement. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Item number 14, Treasurer Tax Collector. This is requesting for approval to sell a tax defaulted property pursuant under Chapter 8 to Habitat for Humanity as outlined in our attached agreement. Good morning, Barbara.
Good morning. Barbara Sullivan, Treasurer Tax Collector. I'm here in front of you for an item that's never come up during my last 4 years, so that's why it's on regular agenda. But it's to sell to an agency, either a public agency or nonprofit, when it's a tax defaulted sale property. So we have the option of pulling it, selling it to them for the defaulted tax amount. And then if it doesn't pass by you, then it goes back on sale. So, but we need this approval for the agreement from us and Habitat to go forward to the state to approve it for final.
Is this for any nonprofit organization?
It's for nonprofits and public agency.
So anybody that has a registered 501c3 could ask that they be considered first for just the amount of the default prior to any public sale?
I'd have to look at the 501(c) part, but I know that Habitat fits the nonprofit part of this. That's who I'm dealing with.
Do you think this is a first for you, you said, or a first
Yeah,
for
it's
the
the first
county?
time I've had one in the last 4 years. I know that they've done a lot of sales through a couple counties. It's been, I don't know if Lynn had one before or not with them, but Frank is here from Habitat if you have any questions for him. So he decided to show up. But this does go through planning, because planning does have to review it to make sure that the zoning is for what they are asking for, yeah. So those steps have been taken. And I'm not sure if it's a part of your whole package, but I do have that.
And then it goes on to the state for final?
Correct, and they goes on with our blessing, that when they finally bless it.
Okay.
It's pretty slam dunk. It's, yeah.
Great. Any questions from the board? Any public comments on this item?
Amherst County Taxpayer Association. There's no amount of money indicated or percentage or whether this would be sold for $1. It seemed like before approving it, you might want to know what the cost involved would be.
It's the purchase price is in there now.
Is it in there?
Yeah.
Oh, I missed it.
$2,212.04.
Okay, I missed it. Thank you.
Hi, Frank Meyer from Habitat for Humanity. I just came up here to make sure that it's understood that in response to Supervisor Spellman's question, this is not open for any 501c3. It's only for those that do housing development. That's specifically in the law that way. So just so you know that. And like we mentioned before, but the cost to Habitat is the total amount owing on the taxes.
Thank you. Any further public comments?
Just so my understanding, that this particular property was never put out to public bid, right?
No.
Okay. So it's because it's a nonprofit, they can get it for whatever the default is.
We're hearing a
but I would
nonprofit
like
that's
to know
related to housing. It's specific as to what kind of not-for-profit.
Because I believe something about Section 8 or something was Chapter 8, I'm sorry, this Chapter 8. And you need so many votes to approve this, right, according to your own rules. I believe I read something about it last night, 4/5 or to give this, because that's fine. If they need it, they can have a tax break, okay? But it's was never put out to the public, see if somebody wants to pay more. And is it specific for housing, or this can be applied to any nonprofit organization?
Specific to housing.
That's it. That's what your book says?
Yes, that's my understanding of it.
Okay, all right.
It's not
Thank-
open for just any 501c3.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further public comments?
Joe Kelly. My understanding, this is a vacant lot, so That means they'll either possibly, and depending upon where it is in the county, they may be looking to do one of their last projects of a move-on modular or mobile home, or to go in and do construction of a new home, and then we'll be coming back to ask for a reduced fee schedule. So we, the taxpayers, wind up subsidizing this in particular. Habitat for Humanity, it does good things, I guess. I've been involved with it in San Luis Obispo County, saw what they did down there. A lot of people were served. A lot of people got homes that they otherwise probably could not have afforded, and I think some of them might have lost them. But anyway, this whole thing is, there used to be, other than just Habitat for Humanity, there used to be other, I believe, nonprofits in this county. Are they still in existence so that they could have been offered this, or was this was not necessarily offered to Habitat, but they saw it on the rolls and stepped up to purchase it? It's just my interest in this is to see how these things are put out to be able to be sold off at the defaulted property issue. Thank you.
I think it was the fine work of Habitat for Humanity, looking at public records and seeing what was available and being able to take advantage of this particular program.
Okay. Well, one other thing, with Habitat for Humanity being probably the largest, one of the largest nonprofit organizations for low-income housing, if I were to walk in with a 501c or be able to qualify, would I be able to be here then and say, well, no, I object to that, and I would like to be considered, or else do a bidding war on it? Can that happen on this issue?
I'm not sure about that. I think if you qualified as one of these not-for-profit organizations, this is specifically related to housing, that you would have an equal opportunity as anyone else that would qualify. As for a bidding war or anything along those lines, I couldn't answer that question at this point.
Okay. Well, what I'm getting at is if I missed this thing and then saw this today, and then I walk in and say, okay, well, wait a minute, I want to be considered for this too. What would be your abilities to do to postpone it, to have it looked at, to see if it winds up to be a bidding war on it or a bidding
So how many
increase?
times would we do that?
Well, I don't know. But if you only do it once, that's one time. And you never know. It might happen again. It might happen. I might go out and get a 501c or whatever it takes to become a nonprofit housing.
Darren's going to do it too.
I'm not sure.
The process was that it went through the tax collector's office.
Yes.
At that point is probably when all of that happens, and then it comes here for approval, that's all. So if there were 10 people that bid on it through the tax collector's office, it would come here for approval for that one person.
Well, let me go back a little bit. Back in the early 2000, 2003, in that era, I believe there were a lot more people like Habitat that did low-income housing, and they were scattered all over this county. So my concern is there still could be one out there that might have missed it, could have been able to do it, or because of their financial status, they are no more or are unable to do it. And Habitat is a large global organization, so I'm not disrespecting that issue. I've had issues with Habitat in the past, and found to my liking what I was able to do through their legal entities, and it changed one of their rules that they held. So thank you.
Okay.
Can I mention one more thing?
Yes, Brooke.
We do publicize the parcels prior to going to sell, and that's what we done starting, I think it was September. So there are a lot of parcels on there, and there was, I think, a total of 69 that went to sale, improved, unimproved, and there are more out there if somebody was interested. So.
Okay, thank you.
The sale was done already.
All right. All right, no further public comment. I'll bring it back to the board.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
I just have one question.
I have a motion on the floor to acknowledge. I have a motion by Supervisor Wright and a second by Supervisor Edson to request for approval to sell the defaulted property pursuant under Chapter 8 to Habitat for Humanity as outlined in the attached agreement. Supervisor Spellman, do you have a comment related to the motion?
No, just one little question. Something that the tax collector said there. So am I to understand that this went out for a bidding process like the other ones do, and nobody bid on it, so then it has to go to rebid, so they're like, hey, can we get it? Or?
Because of the timing of receiving the paperwork, once it was publicized and they showed interest, we had to have their meeting minutes, their mission statement, had to go through planning. So the timing of that went past our sale, so it doesn't get put on the sale. So if it doesn't go through today, then it would go on the next reoffer, which I have in February. So it would go out for reoffer, but it was not on this last sale.
Okay. No further comments?
Oh, other than that, I just wanted to say that somebody was saying about, who maybe some people might have missed out on it, Joe, well, then I guess that they're just not as sharp as Frank.
Okay. All those in favor? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, I understand planning needs a few minutes to do some setup. Number 16?
15.
Or 15, excuse me, 15. So we'll give a 5-minute recess to allow planning to do some setup.
He said he's fine.
Oh, you're fine?
Yeah,
okay.
we're ready to go.
Are we okay on audio? I know he's, okay. All right. We will continue. Item number 15 is with planning. Planning Department recommends that the Board of Supervisors find the proposed parcel map 2014-061 PAR for Stephen Snowden is inconsistent with policy 07-242 requiring public water and sewer service of 40-acre minimum lot size for the creation of more than one additional parcel. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Peter Maurer, Planning Director. This is what we really have before us is a pre-application review. I met with the applicant several months ago and explained that the project that he was proposing, which is a 3-lot split of about 19 acres, could not be approved under this policy that was adopted in 2007, which says, as you explained, that you either have to have public water and sewer to create more than 2 lots, or they have to be 40 acres in size. And these are 2 5s and a 9-acre parcel. So it's inconsistent with the policy. Now, when this was adopted, there were a lot more projects in-house, and I think this was an issue of concern of the board at that time, that a lot of projects could be processed that would end up being inconsistent with the direction that the general plan was going. Since that time, those were sort of worked through the process, and I'm not aware of any more recent applications or similar to this. So the normal process would be that they would submit an application, we'd process it, but then have to recommend denial. And rather than requiring the applicant spend several $1,000s in studies and application fees and processing costs, we just brought it up before you for consideration on this one issue. If you should decide that there are unique circumstances applying to this property that the policy should be waived, then we would process a normal parcel map, have to go through the CEQA process, look at issues such as access and circulation, the other issues we look at with the map. But the question really is should the policy apply in this case? And I could find no reason that your policy should not apply, and therefore I could not I could not waive it. And the applicant asked that it come before you for your consideration. So there really isn't, we don't have a map before us. We're not approving a map. It's just whether or not to even process the map is the question. It's located at the end of Vineyard Terrace. It's about a 1.5 miles from Highway 4 off of Penn Gulch Road. It's currently zoned for 5-acre parcels. The current general plan designation under the Murphy's Douglas Flat area plan also calls for 5-acre minimum parcels. The draft number 2 land use map that was presented to you about 1.5 years ago shows the property being designated for 10-acre minimum parcels. Other than that, there's really not a whole lot of additional information to provide you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
So this hasn't gone before the Planning Commission at all? This is just applicant talking with you. In your ability, can't really waive it approve it at this point, so it's, an applicant has asked that it come before the board for
Yes, that's correct.
a decision one way or the other.
Correct.
Is the applicant here today? Does the applicant wish to comment at all?
Good morning.
Good morning. You Mr. Snowden?
Yes.
Okay.
I am asking the board to review this project as one of the discretionary developments for the lot split, which was zoned with every intention to split it years ago, and there's been multiple delays and reasons that it hasn't been split prior to this. And I've spoke with Public Works. They're okay with it. I've asked Bernita, who's on my behalf, to comment on it. And I'm here to answer any questions you might have as far as me asking this, as far as yes or no. And I've got piles and piles of paperwork on Vineyard Terrace. It's got a long history. But I had had it rezoned in '94 with the intention of subdividing it into 5-acre parcels. I'm only asking, and that would be 4. I'm only asking for a 3-parcel split. I've put lots and lots and hundreds of thousands of dollars into the infrastructure since we purchased it with the intention of splitting it. So, if there's any comments as to why, I mean, I don't really understand a lot of this wording in this. Specifically, when it comes to the resolution itself. And it seems to me that they're talking about future development within an unincorporated area of Calaveras County, which evidently I'm in. And it encourages high-density development served by public surface water and sewage. So we don't have that infrastructure there. And I'm kind of confused because, as far as I know, I've been up here all my life, and I know that the sewer and water is taxed as it is. I mean, it's running at its maximum, pretty much. I mean, it's got a lot of faults. It's worn out and it's old, and it needs repair. And there's even cases where they've cited health hazards with the water from UPUD. So I have 2 wells on my property right now, and they have a good yield. And I'm confused as far as the new map that zones or that has the zoning or the use description on them, because the color codes are all off. And mine is the same color as the lot below me that was Ashwauben's, if you remember that one. And they are now putting in a septic and well. And there's another person that bought it, the last one of those lots, that's also going to be doing that. And they're doing that in an area where I paid for the road and the PG&E and the whole infrastructure to go up there with this in mind. And I guess I just missed something. It was either because of my health or some other reason that I didn't get in prior to the '07 resolution. And I can give you all sorts of information that would probably bore you, because this goes on for 20 years. And I've got many applications that I was going to put in. I've talked to pretty much every planning director since Sue Larson. That goes way back. I mean, it looks like a history on my folders of all the cards and people I've spoke to throughout the years. And it's all been contingent on the provisions that they set forth, and the main one, biggest hurdle, was the road. That was a very expensive road to put in, but I mean, I did everything but the paving, knowing what that cost, waiting for that to be done. That got delayed, and I'm asking for consideration.
Okay, so what I hear you saying, at one point in the past, you wanted to develop it into 5-acre parcels, and today you're just exploring turning it into 3 parcels. Or
yeah, the 2 5s and the remainder.
2 5s and the remainder. And then seeing here too, so are you at the end of this road?
No, I'm not.
Okay. And do you have currently water and sewer now for all 3 of these parcels, or
No.
just one for all of it right now?
We've just got independent septic systems and wells.
Okay.
They don't have the sewer available up
Okay, that's what I meant to say. It has a well and a septic now.
Correct.
Okay, all right. And what's the fire department say about the road? Are you okay with the road, or?
They're okay with the road. They actually didn't design a hammerhead or a turnaround when Ashwanda's TPM was approved.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought that to their attention, and it's in the records back then at the board meeting, because it goes at the end of that subdivision, it's private property right now. And the fire department has to use my property, and it's okay. They've got a hammerhead design that was accepted, and I talked to the fire department. I recently went over to talk to him yesterday and have a meeting with him and an engineer to go over the road so that Robert Packinger understands and that I'm telling the truth as far as the measurements and the design of it. I mean, this whole road was designed basically because Tom Tryon wanted a bypass through Douglas Flat at one point, and a bicycle path and walking path. And I could never figure out why we had to do this massive road in there. However, I think that's what the county requires now. It's just that he wanted that road to access, and we were told that he'd take our property, eminent domain, to do it at the time. So, nevertheless, we persevered and we put the road in, and finally it got paved. And so has Skunk Ranch level has been brought up to level C, and Penn Gulch has been paved. So basically, the fire doesn't have a problem with that. As a matter of fact, they've responded on a couple calls for me and my illness. But so yeah, that's the fire department is good with that, and I will design or change it or develop it any way they need for a hammerhead turn.
And plus, I think I think this details like that would come up, or could be addressed in the actual process. This is just to see if they can go forward, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, it would actually be to their advantage to have a turnaround that they don't have yet.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to?
I see no problem with this going forward. I mean, it's
thank you.
It's a very small project. It's only going to help the community. So
It's in a nice area, and it's
please
very
go
desirable.
forward and try to get it done before the next 20 years. And then
No, it's been a matter of me asking for this, and I appreciate this review today because I had no idea what the costs would involve or the conditions would require, and they seem to have changed quite a bit between the different developers that have been in there. So,
but it's best once if you do get us to say okay, it's best to make sure you
create it.
Work hard to get it.
Yeah, my one question is I would like to put it up for sale. Of course, you can't sell something without an APN number, unless it's got a contingency in escrow, which because I know, I've been through this, I've paid the costs of this whole thing prior in 2 instances, and then everybody else has as far as the reviews. I'm pretty sure that nothing's really changed. We'll find out, but there's been other reviews done recently for the parcels around us in that same area. We don't have any artifacts or get that on us. That's been looked at.
Okay.
So, yeah, I would love to. I could even get a loan for whatever, probably from my brother, but whatever the conditions are, I will accommodate.
Okay. Thank you. Does the board have any questions? I have some questions for Peter.
I met with Mr. Snowden, and I recommended that they come before the board because of the policy of 07242, but the resolution also says that we will consider proposed projects on its respective merits. The applicant is allowed to do a 2-parcel split. In this case, he wants to do a 3-parcel split. And considering it's been zoned RA5 for many years under the Murphys-Douglas Flat Community Plan and the circumstances, I support this. I support the concept of him doing a 3-parcel split. He still has to provide whatever mitigations are necessary. But to have gone through the whole process to come back to have the planning commission or the board say nix, in this case I felt it more appropriate, and I agreed with planning department to bring it to the board prior to his doing extra work and extra cost for himself. So I did support 07242. I think that's good public policy for us to have. The concern would be, well, there's other large parcels in the area, but nobody has worked on these. There are other large parcels except this applicant in this case for this parcel. So going back to the resolution and the policy, I do think we should allow him to proceed based on a 3-parcel split. And in talking, the utilities in the Murphys area are not anxious. Is that the word you use? She's familiar with the utilities of the Murphys area to expand their service area. So the possibility of sewer and or surface water going to this parcel or the parcels in this area are probably very slim for the next 20 to 50 years. So I do ask the board to support what he would like to do, what Mr. Stone would like to do.
Okay.
And then to proceed with what he has to do with the planning department. Is that, I want you to understand what I'm saying.
I do.
We agree
with conditions that are set forth.
And that whatever mitigations might be there, there will not be a secondary emergency access. I'm as supportive of that as I am. That probably will not be, can't be part of the discussion because it isn't going to happen.
No, it's...
unless you all want to do eminent domain on behalf of a private party. Okay.
Any other comments? So
I just want to make sure you understand that if there's some Murphy's Fire District things that you might need to do, or some requirements from Public Works or Planning, that's part of allowing the 3-parcel split. Mr. Snowden.
I'm not a quick learner, but 20 years worth is pretty much drilled into my head. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other comments from the board?
I'm just glad that Mr. Stone's here today, and I look forward to approving.
All right. All right, I'm going to take Mr. Stone some public comments at this point. So are there any public comments on this item? Thank you, Mr. Stein.
Alice Gallup, Taxpayer Association. Boy, this is a wonderful day. I really agree with Marita and Chris. And boy, if this keeps going, we might have a return to respect for property rights. The lesson here, I think, is we have a general plan now. There's 10 years of efforts to dramatically change it, or maybe partially change it, or minimally change it. And there was an ordinance passed, which I don't agree with, on 40 acres and 5 acres. I think we need to follow our existing general plan and existing zoning, and then after that would be changed, if it is changed, then consider the new criteria. So to me, it's a no-brainer. We need to approve this project. But even more important than that, we don't want to put regulatory hurdles in front of him and barricades like demanding an EIR or something like that, environmental impact report. And so I'm so glad that we have somebody wanting to do something positive in this county. And that's really a good thing. And we need more of this. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Peter Reyes, General. Hopefully everybody will like to see not just you, but your staff do whatever they can do to help this guy out to do it. He's taking a big chance. It's with his own money. And don't make it any more difficult. Make it simple and stupid, because you do need the property tax and etc. And this guy's willing to take a chance. He's gambling. But hopefully it's going to be demand and it's going to be a worthwhile investment for him. So I have a lot of respect for the guy. Let him do it and do whatever you can in the long run for him to be successful. Also that you're referring to that old general plan comment, what's going to come in the future. All those signatures are not going to be around next year. Every one of those supervisors are gone. So take the hint. There might be a reason for it. Thank you.
Any other additional comments?
Joe Kelly, I've just got a couple of questions. I heard that it was 2 lots and a remainder. Now, I understand that if he to stay out of going, he's under 5 lots and he's under 4 lots. So I'm kind of concerned as to why he chose the term remainder for the lot, because remainder in the regulatory sense of the word of a 4 lot and a remainder keeps you from going into a white paper and leaving you under a parcel map, but you, the owner, have to maintain and keep that remainder lot unless you go and change and go through that. So that is one thing I'm looking at. Is that going to be his own homestead and the other 2 lots would be up for sale eventually? I believe it was, 2 wells put in, or 1 well? Is it meeting gallons per minute and all that type of thing that's necessary in the area? And the approved septic, is it a system of gravity or engineered? Otherwise, it's been a long time, since '07, with 40 acres and a mule, and you folks have rejected others for it, but they were much larger parcels. And as Ms. Callaway said, put out is bring it up on the merits. Well, I think any of them that come before it on this 07242 should be looked at fully at the merits, and not because of the size of the parcel and having to keep the 40 acres and 1 or 2 smaller. So if you're going to change here, then you better be prepared to adapt and change for others that might come in again. Because what's good for one is good for other under the concept of merits of 07242. Thank you. But I'd like to see him get it. Thank you.
Any other public comments? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back before the board.
May I make a suggestion?
Yes, Mr. Ray.
All that detail that Joe wants is, it's good information, but really we're not getting into that right now.
Okay, good.
So
good.
I was just to wait. You can come back when it comes to planning.
I can hang it.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments from the board?
I'd like to thank Planning Department for bringing this forward to us because, and it just goes to show you how hard that particular group is working for the people of the county now. So, thanks very much. Peter?
Okay. Any other comments? I'll entertain a motion.
I move that.
I'll let Marita do it.
No.
All right.
I heard Supervisor Callaway loud and clear
I'll second.
making the motion. Second by Supervisor Edson. To recommend to the board, we find that proposed parcel map 2014-061 for Stephen Snowden to go ahead and pursue it with the Planning Department. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
I thank the board
Thank you.
for the consideration, all the comments, and in particular Marita for being a great supervisor with the people and handling the issues at hand. She's been great for everybody I know and myself as well. And thank you, Marita.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 17. We have several items, 16 through 23 all relate to planning. Number 16, from planning, establishing an agricultural preserve, number 330 for Richard and Drenna Wagner. Good morning.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Gina Cathan, County Planning. If you would like, we can take these individually. I'm not sure if you want me to go into any great detail. I can give you just a brief description of each ag preserve contract as it's expressed in your packets that you've already read. Just so you know, before we get into that, each one of these applications has already gone before our county's Agricultural Advisory Committee, and they have made a positive recommendation to you to approve and establish each and every contract. So there's a total of 6. They vary just slightly with the different recommendations. A few of them have ordinances attached to them because the zoning needs to be approved. The ag preserve zoning needs to be approved if you indeed vote to establish the actual Williamson Act or the ag preserve for these individuals. The other 3 have already gotten the ag preserve contracts in the past, and so therefore they already have the ag preserve zoning. So if you would like, we can go through each individual contract, or if you have any questions about particular ones, we can address those, or if you just want to go straight to vote for all 6.
Okay. I see all of them as I reviewed them myself. We're all pretty straightforward, very well through the process and recommended by all those involved. My recommendation is that we approve these in one.
I do have to chime in.
Oops, we have a Brown
I
Act.
do have to chime in under the Brown Act because it is a regular agenda item. Each regular agenda item has to be open for public comment to allow the public to speak on each item.
Oh,
So
I was going to allow them to speak, but
So if you wanted to speak on, I mean, I suppose if you were to...
Oh, we don't want to, we don't want to get in trouble with the Brown Act, so we'll... Okay, item number 16, establish an agricultural preserve number 330 for Richard and Drenna Wagner. Any board comments? Any public comments on this item?
Joe Kelly. I could have done it on all of them because I only have one question, because it has a concern that I've found as I have been in the different areas and talking to different people in the ag community. Once you establish a Williamson Act ag preserve, and it's based on all the financials and all this, that they can meet a 2,000 minimum, and now with the state coming in and saying, okay, 57 point something dollars per acre is the value now. Do you do periodic inspections to verify use other than the 2,000 minimum to qualify, might produce to you every year? And I'm not being disrespectful to anybody that's putting this in, because I have looked at on the maps and know the ranches and that. So, but I'm concerned because I have come across one. I haven't completely verified the information, but a neighbor had complained to me when I was having a discussion with him about it. And it's not being used for agriculture, but it's in the ag preserve. So that's my question, is something the county might want to look into for the ag commissioner to go do, if he doesn't do it already. Thanks.
Okay. Does the ag commissioner want to answer that question? And good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Kevin Wright, Agricultural Commissioner. His concerns are probably valid. Over the past, as long as there's been this program, there's been divisions of land where an individual may wind up owning less than the proper amount to be in an ag preserve itself. But be that as it may, they are. So I would say that there's instances out there where we do have people who own land in an ag preserve that shouldn't probably be in one. And, we need to probably non-renew some of those people. We haven't. We don't have the resources, or we haven't had the resources to do such a thing. But perhaps now we might be able to, with the planning department helping me out on some of this stuff, be able to address some of those issues. What it takes really is for not just the ag department or the planning department or the assessor's department or the surveyor's department. It takes everybody working together to actually identify these places and then move forward as a group. So we can do it. It takes time. It's taken whatever since 1970 to get into the particular area that we are. I don't think our county is any different than any other county. But if we need to scrutinize some of these parcels that are in ag preserve and maybe smaller than even 40 acres, that can be done.
Thank you.
I did want to clarify. Everybody who is in a contract does check in with the county and does provide the paperwork and verification that they do meet the standards of the $2,000 each year. So the county does have that provided, correct?
Yes, we get annual reports. Some people have not submitted annual reports.
And what do you do about it when they don't? Ask them to?
Yeah. Sometimes we still haven't got. Sometimes they've been people who you know.
Okay.
That may have gone before you.
All right. Any other public comments on this item? All right. So item number 16.
Second.
I have a motion by Supervisor Edson and second by Supervisor Wright to establish Ag Preserve number 330 for Richard and Drena Wagner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent, Supervisor Spellman. Number 17, planning, adopt a resolution to de-establish Ag Preserve number 248 and 249 and establish Ag Preserve number 332 and 333 for Lance and Wanda Onito and Dave and Libby Kasich.
This is one of those that's a little bit different than the others. We have two existing contracts, happens to be all within the same family, just different family members. There is a transfer of about 111 acres from one family member to another, and that is the reason for the disestablishment of the two existing contracts. So we're going to disestablish the two existing contracts, take 111 acres from one contract, transfer it over to the other, we have to reestablish 2 new contracts. Same amount of acreage as was before. There's no loss of acreage out of the ag preserve. Same family. It's just simply, kind of modifying, if you will, the existing contracts.
All right. Any board questions or comments? Any public comments on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back before the board for a motion.
Make a motion to approve. Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Edson, to adopt a resolution to de-establish Ag Reserve number 248 and 249 and establish Ag Reserve 332 and 333 for Lansom Wanda Onito and Dave and Libby Kasich. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with 1 absent, Supervisor Edson. Oh, excuse me, Spellman. Wow. My deepest apologies. Number 18, adopt a resolution establishing Ag Preserve number 331 for Joe and Melissa Brush. Gina?
The Brushes are new to the Ag Preserve world. Brand new established application to establish a new Ag Preserve. Folks are down on the near the Hunt Road portion of our county. They are proposing approximately a half acre of mixed orchard. Actually, they've already got that there. And the remaining of the land is about 140 acres. It's going to be leased out for a dry beef cattle operation, dry pasture. So again, they've already gone before the Ag Advisory Committee, and the recommendation to you is that we establish the contract.
Okay. Any board comments or questions? Any public comments on this item? Okay, I'll entertain a motion on number 18.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Edson, second by Supervisor Wright, to adopt a resolution establishing Ag Preserve number 331 for Joe and Melissa Brush. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with 1 absent, Supervisor Spellman. Number 19, planning. Adopt an ordinance amending the zoning from A1, General Ag, to AP, Agricultural Preserve, for the purpose of establishing Agricultural Preserve number 331 for Joe and Melissa Brush. This allows us to
So
do what
again,
we're doing.
if we, since you voted to establish the actual Ag Preserve, the Williams Act contract, we now have to establish the zoning. So the zoning, the Ag Preserve zoning goes along with the Ag Preserve contract and the Williamson Act. So our proposal is obviously to change it from the current A1 zoning district to the Ag Preserve zone district to be consistent with the contract.
Any comments or questions from the board? Any public comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Wright, to adopt an ordinance amending the zoning from A1 to AP for the purpose of establishing Agricultural Preserve number 331 for Joe and Melissa Brush. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with 1 absent, Supervisor Spellman. Number 20, planning, adopt a resolution to establish Agricultural Preserve number 334 for Christopher and Trudy Seawald. Gina?
The Seawalds actually own, you'll see that they're actually showing up twice, or actually 4 times in this case, on the agenda. They're proposing 2 separate contracts. And the reason for the 2 separate contracts is because there is, their land is not contiguous. There's a portion of land in between their acreages that is owned by someone else. So they had no choice but to establish 2 separate contracts. So the first one is for approximately, my notes are in my bag, approximately 500 and some odd acres of land. Again, in addition to establishing the contract, we need to adopt the zoning that goes along with the contract. The property itself is already in agriculture production. It's being leased out by the Fisher family, and they've been running cattle on the subject property for some time now. So they've already established the agricultural use and proven that they're able to meet the minimum requirements.
Okay, any board comments or questions on item number 21? No, is that 21? 20, thank you. Any public comments on item number 20?
Joe Kelly, I should have done this up at the front, but I wasn't thinking about it. The Williamson Act subvention funding is still zero, right, from the state of California. The county still owes triple-digit dollars to the state. So then at this point, any new Williamson Act contracts coming in are being subsidized by we the people in Calaveras County. We're going to be the ones expected to make up any difference on it when it happens. Okay, I just wanted to make that a public thing. Thank you, Marita, for nodding on that one. So give it a lot of thought, folks, when you do this, but the agriculture has to be here. It has to have the, I guess, has to have the subsidization to be able to make it work. But the people, when it comes to that time of pain, and it comes to a point where it's going to be offered to the people to sign on for a county tax, a lot of this will be brought up. Thank you.
My question was how much pain, how much taxes are we losing by transferring regular property into the ag preserve? Yes. I mean, how much? I'm just curious.
Okay.
Unfortunately, that's not a question I can answer. We would have to address that, or I should say that should be addressed by the assessor's office. So there is a formal calculation that's, figured out. Certainly you can consult with them if there was any real question about savings in taxes and the amount.
Okay, we'll refer that to the tax assessor.
The assessor's
Or the
office,
assessor, not the
yes.
tax assessor. I don't know, people look at it all the same. Okay, thank you, Gina. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion on item number 20.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Callaway, to adopt a resolution to establish Ag Preserve number 334 for Christopher and Trudy Seawald. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. Supervisor Spellman. Item number 21, adopt an ordinance amending the zoning from A1 to AP for the purpose of establishing agricultural preserve number 334 for Christopher and Trudy Seawald. So we once again established the preserve, and now it's the zoning.
Pretty much the same thing as the one prior to that for the Seawalds. This property is approximately 1,500 acres, also currently in agriculture production.
Okay. Any board comments or questions? Any public comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Edson, second by Supervisor Callaway, adopt an ordinance amending the zoning from A1 to AP for the purpose of establishing agricultural preserve number 334 for Christopher and Trudy Seawald. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. Supervisor Spellman. Number 22, adopt a resolution to establish agricultural preserve number 335 for Christopher and Trudy Seawald. Gina? The other property on the other side of the...
Yes, it's the other property on the other side of the land owned by someone else.
Okay. Any comments or questions from the board? Any public comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Wright, to adopt a resolution to establish Ag Preserve number 335 for Christopher and Trudy Seawald. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent. Supervisor Spellman. Number 23, adopt an ordinance amending the zoning from A1 to AP for the purpose of establishing an Ag Preserve for 335 for Christopher and Trudy Seawald. Any comments or questions from the board? Any public comments on this item? Mr. Kelly?
Joe Kelly. I want to catch it on this one since it's the last one. What bothers me is we have large properties coming in for agriculture, yet for ag preserves, yet we do not allow smaller properties such as 20 acres that can produce $60,000 a year to the owner from their crop. So I'm wondering why they aren't allowed to do this. You have a standardization now of larger parcels, and it needs to change to be allowed people to be allowed to use their agricultural properties in small parcels. Without it, then you're jeopardizing the owner of that property, because not only, say they're growing trees, do they have to pay a tree tax, but they're also going to continue to be taxed at a conventional higher rate rather than for the agricultural preserve use they're doing. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Maurer, are you going to answer that question?
These are the standards that are currently established by the state and the county for Williamson Act contract. It's likely to be a provision in the resource production element that was recommended by the Ag Committee that we consider amending our standards to allow for smaller parcels to enter into the Williamson Act contract. So I think that's something we'll
Possibly forthcoming in the
future.
GP.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I do
Any
also
other?
want to clarify, under the Williamson Act, for non-prime land, they look at 40-acre parcels, and for prime land, they look at 10-acre parcels. That is what the government code lays out. Our resolutions do set out different standards that are intended to be more restrictive.
Well, it's good
That's where
information.
those numbers came from.
House of Gallup Taxpayer Association. We concur, and we're glad that our plan director is considering this in the general plan update. We should have as minimum restrictions on people's use of this property as possible. Thank you.
One other thing, if I may add on to what Ms. Stedfield said, is non-prime could be rocky, non-water. Prime is where you have irrigation. So the 20-acre thing does make, but we've not seen it happen. Thank you.
Peter Ridge, gentlemen. Most of these things I like to support these farmers to take it into ag land. If there's no demand, what's the sense of supply? And if you get supply, no demand, it's simple. But I support them. I respect that. But I would want the same support and respect for all property owners in this county. I mean, those folks went in there because that's the least expensive and most financially feasible, this particular decision. And I support them as their property. But I would like to have the same courtesy and respect for other property owners in a whole county, so they can use it for the whatever classification they want it in the long run. Because right now, economic is bad in the whole state, and it will change. Maybe not in my lifetime, but it will change eventually. And whatever we can do to what we have here as individuals and properties to maintain till things turn around. It's not just in this county. I'm talking about the whole state in general, to make sure that when the time comes, that they will be able to survive and be able to be more productive and beneficial for the whole community. I don't want to see this county to be famous. Oh, we got so many welfare recipients. They're great. The largest employers in this state is the government. That's not going to last so long. That's got a diminishing return. It's going to go broke. So I'm glad you folks voting for it, and I hopefully just keep that same thing in mind. There's another land issue is going to be coming up soon. Thank you.
Okay.
Just a question. The Williamson Act, the agricultural preserve, that's to maintain the property without development? Is that the intent? So you can't really compare ag property to people's personal, because we're allowed to develop that. So we can't even begin to consider any equitable consideration of less taxes for ag as to our own personal property. So I don't think, you're asking for having the same consideration. I don't think there needs to be the same consideration because people are pledging to maintain their property without development to preserve for future. When we develop, it's generally for our own financial benefit. So I think there's a big distinction between the Ag Preserve, the Williamson Act, and what we own as our own private properties where we live and build. I think that's the difference.
Okay. Any further public comment? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Wright, to adopt an ordinance amending the zoning from A1 to AP for the purpose of establishing agricultural preserve number 335 for Christopher and Trudy Seawald. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with one absent, Supervisor Spellman. Thank you, Gina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, number 24 is board member announcements. In compliance with AB 1234, chaptered as Government Code Section 532.32.3, this is the time for board members to report on meetings attended on behalf of the county to carry out their duties as a county supervisor. Supervisor Spellman? Okay, seeing none, Supervisor Callaway.
I'll be in Sacramento at the Rural County Representatives meeting. We'll be going over the policies for RCRC, and they will be approved in January. So after any modifications, we'll make sure the board has a copy of the policies. These are policies that directs the RCR staff on what kinds of programs they will be lobbying on in the position. That is also something I have been asking that this board do, that you have a policy on legislative matters so that respective departments would know how to support or not support without continuing, because everything moves really fast through the legislature. So this will be for all the rural counties, and after any modifications, I'll see if I'll get it out to Diane to send it to you, because it'll have to be voted on. It will be voted on in January. Also tomorrow we're going to be continuing the public hearing on the Community Facilities District for the PACE program, which again we considered before, and I think it would be very much in the interest of Calaveras residents to be able to have a PACE program, and so that will probably be approved, I'm assuming, tomorrow. I'll be attending the retirement for Vern Pyle from Utica Power. You going to go, Debbie?
Yeah.
Okay. This is probably the third time he's retired.
I know.
And the Humane Society, I have an Area 12 Agency on Aging meeting and a LAFCO meeting. I also want to bring one other item up. We don't have a homeless shelter in this county, and we have very little funding for emergency housing. We've gone through this before. We have a big storm that's coming in tomorrow. We've had them before. We've had severe snowstorms. We've opened emergency shelters on rare occasions, and I really think this is something the board needs to deal with. We have an opportunity with the housing element to do something on a more long-term basis, and I believe we're bringing something to the board next meeting, Mr. Maurer, on an ordinance for emergency shelter.
Last month, the Planning Commission recommended approval of a series of ordinance amendments to the zoning code that addressed a number of implementation programs in the housing element. One of those addresses shelters, emergency shelters, and that will be on your agenda next week.
think Angels Camp is a perfect place.
Well, that's fine. I mean, I can only address things up in the Ebbets Pass area, but it's been a continual issue. And I know there's at least in District 3, there's one church that if asked by Health and Human Services, they will open up the church. But it's really something we keep pushing down the road and pushing down the road. And the adjoining counties have ability to sort of handle it, and they have sometimes taken Calaveras residents. I don't think coming up that they have the ability to do that. I just think it's an issue as you approve the housing element, you look at something on a more long-term basis versus the emergency shelters. It's like people are homeless. I know Supervisor Whitson's talked about it on occasion. They're out of sight, out of mind. Well, we have a storm coming up. Where are they going to be? And I just think we shouldn't have to deal with this. And the way we're dealing with it is not in supportive of our Health and Human Services Agency or the residents of the county, be they homeless or not. So that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Supervisor Wright?
Sure. Couple quick things. Been in a phone meeting with Supervisor Edson, the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, with their regional office here. It's regional down they're out of Mariposa, but they cover our area, and to discuss possible funding coming up this next year for the watershed project we're working on. And they were pretty positive about that, so we're hopeful to continue to move that forward. That's one of a series of meetings that both Cliff and I have been participating in on that project. Another thing, following up with kind of what Marita was saying there, I sit on the Calaveras Mariposa Community Action Agency for this Board of Supervisors, and we had a meeting yesterday to allocate a minimal amount of funding, pass-through funding from the Fed and the states. Feds really, but part of that funding we allocated will go towards helping homeless folks in the Angels Camp area, mostly through the Sierra Hope. So we allocated, every few years there's an RFP that goes out, and then once those people qualify, those organizations qualify for the RFP, then for multiple years we kind of have a funding stream that goes into those organizations. And so this current year, we allocated $9,000. This is just for Calaveras, not for Mariposa, but $9,000 for DRAIL. They help with disabled folks, low-income disabled folks. $2,500 for Salvation Army. $17,500 for the Sierra Hope, and that really helps out people in crisis that are, you have families that lose their housing, and they're really, or people really, just homeless, yesterday. They can provide for emergency rental assistance and that type of thing. Also, they do some food pantry stuff to assist with the food bank. And on the food bank end of things, we allocated $66,569 this year for the food bank. The food bank has done, they continue to do just a tremendous job. They served 4,500 people this last year. So it's 10% of the population is being served by the food bank, which, kind of underlying all this is, why do we have this problem at all? I mean, in my mind, we live in the richest country in the world ever known to mankind, and so, we really shouldn't have this problem. We just need to be better organized. The resources are there. But since there are problems still, it's good to have a thing like the food bank so you can get food to feed your family and yourself. And then we also allocated $67,000 to the dental project, so you can actually eat the food without being in severe pain. There's also trying to resolve the larger dental problem is there's a dental task force that'll be meeting on January 8th. I'll be attending. That will be hopefully looking at getting more dentists that actually opened up in the county. So that's all I have.
Permanently or for?
Both. All permanently is what we have.
Supervisor Edson?
Yes, so on the 2nd of January, Chris and I and John Garamendi Jr. went to Merced to meet with Dr. Roger Bales on the watershed management program. Dr. Bales has been doing studies in the Sierra Nevadas for years, and his latest study, the past 4 years, has resulted in some findings on water yield and forest fire reduction or wildfire reduction and habitat health, the healthy habitat. And so he's got a project going now in Placer County that he's going to be doing. We tried to get him to come here, but I don't know if we're going to be able to do that. But anyhow, so he listens to our program, he listens to the presentation, and he supports it. He thinks it's where we need to go and what we need. So, on the 4th, I had a meeting with the Amador group that's working their community college, which is basically online studies, and we were just talking about our situation with Delta. How do we partner up on some things if it's possible. So basically, it was just informational meeting, and we're probably going to have another meeting. I'll put together another meeting with our committee for Delta College in the near future, and be discussing our progress with Delta College and what are the possibilities for other things and the collaboration with Columbia as well. On the 5th, went up to I went to Angels Camp, the meeting with the Commission on Aging, and at Debbie's place, and Debbie was there too. I'll let her probably talk about that, but I was there, so I'll let her discuss the rest of it. On the 5th, also, Sierra Nevada Conservancy with Chris. That was a pretty good phone call. On the 6th, which was last Saturday, I went to the Valley Springs Parade, and it was a really good turnout. They had 39 they had 40 entrants, one canceled, but there was 39 different entries. A lot of kids, lots of kids. It was great. The weather actually was absolutely perfect. It was a really fun parade. I had a great time. I got to be a judge on it, which is really fun to do because I get to see they stop right in front of us and throw us candy basically. So that was pretty fun. On the 6th, in the evening, I was at Save the Music here in San Andreas. And basically, it's from, CUSD was talking about eliminating some of their programs. Music program was one of them. And so Neil Yamervik and his crew got together and decided to put this program together to continue with fundraising to at least, even enhance the music programs. So they're out fundraising for Save the Music. And it was fun. So they had Calaveras High alumni there, and in a choir and a band, and they still got their chops, man. It was I was thoroughly impressed by both the choir and the band. And then yesterday, I had a meeting with RCRC, and just general discussion, kind of updates, and they were here to not meet with me, but with other folks here in town. But they stopped by because they probably figured I wanted to meet with them, I guess. So So we sat and talked about the watershed management program and circulation and a few other things around here that we could possibly get their help on. One of the things that I stressed to them was I like the idea of them being a rural county representative, because I feel that we need to get our rural counties to work a little bit more together, become a stronger force with some of the things that are happening in the state. We seem to be competing quite a bit with the larger populations, Southern California, even Sacramento, and I feel that if we bond as rural counties, maybe we could have a better, stronger voice in our government. So they're all for that. They do that already. They've been doing it, but and they like the participation. They mentioned how good Marita's been over there with RCRC, and we certainly appreciate Marita's representing our board for as long as she has there, for sure. And then last, I'd just like to make a comment. We talked about the resource for the service community officer a little earlier. I don't want it to be just a discussion that happens today and then go away. I would certainly like to keep bringing it up and put together maybe a ad hoc committee to figure out what that's going to look like. Certainly would like to make sure that we find funding for an officer to do that task as quickly as possible, get it rolling, and then what I'd like to see is a total program of what a program would look like here in Calaveras County as a complete program. That's how I'd like to see it. I'd like to see a plan for that. But for right now, I think it's really important with the stresses in in every environment, actually. The stresses in the schools, in the communities. You can see it in people when you're talking with people, like I do a lot, even in my restaurant. People are stressed, and they're stressed about their funding. They're stressed about money. They're stressed about it seems like what they're trying to do is just barely make it for years and years and years and years. It gets to you after a while. And of course, the fact that we have issues that we have in our schools, our young people that aren't in school, and in our neighborhoods. So you can go almost in Valley Springs, I know for sure. In San Andreas, in back of my house, you can definitely have use a lot of support in those areas. So if we don't pay for it now, we're going to pay for it later. That's the way I look at it. That's all I have.
Okay, so I'm going to report on the COG meeting was held last Wednesday here in the board chambers, and our chair and citizen committee member Paul Stein finished out his term and basically retired as the member, one of the citizen members of COG. So we recognized his tenure there at COG, and he did not share with us what his future plans are, but I hope they're fun. At COG, we approved and are pursuing some of our shelters in different areas of the county, so we're making progress there. Some have gone up. Some are in the process of bidding for construction to be put up. We also have acquired a couple of buses, but one has been returned as it didn't meet our specifications, and we hope to have that back soon. We looked at our routes. We're down just a few percentage points in some of our routes, but also looking at from one budget year to the next and seeing if our numbers mix. One of the routes that is down is really kind of in the District 2 area. So there was we approved for a grant being submitted by Common Grounds to take a look at kind of, I call it a sub-level type of transportation that looks at smaller vehicles, the vans and things along that ride or along those lines. or kind of an on-call demand ride type program. So again, these are some grants that were open to us to apply for, very competitive, and Common Grounds was pursuing that on behalf of their organization in the county, looking at kind of seniors and veterans were kind of the target group for that particular grant. So we'll wait to hear from that in the future there. Tomorrow I attend the EMS Joint Powers meeting. It's being held in Copperopolis, the fire station. We will be hearing this within the next 6 months, the approval of the contract for American Legion and Ebbets Pass Fire in regards to ambulance contracts for Calaveras County. We're also, too, this was something that, is kind of nice. It happened much quicker than I thought it ever would. About a year ago, there was a recommendation that EMS agency pursue a kind of a mid-level practitioner to help support our fire departments, kind of someone above EMT and below paramedic. And so that program is up and going, and there was a class, I believe, it started maybe within the last month or so, that was open, and it was a joint venture of many other agencies coming together to teach this class. And this was brought to us by Jeff Stone from the, I believe, Mountain Ranch area. And it's nice to see that class being taught and having some of those mid-level practitioners out in our rural communities. And I just commend people at all different levels, but especially for Jeff Stone for carrying that message forward and asking us to pursue something along those lines. As Cliff noted, the Area 12 Agency on Aging had their December meeting. We hosted it in Angels Camp. Big accomplishment there was taking a look at their bylaws and trying to conform with the many laws that are out there. And so the commission has done a good job this year, and I want to give Diane and those on the commissioners a big kudos for that, because many times you kind of operate and you go along not knowing of all the laws that are out there and how you should be governed. So I think it's a good start for this next year. And also the commission, because they want to be more flexible in programs and services that they offer, taking a look at, do they want to be a commission under the Board of Supervisors arena, or do they want to kind of go out on their own per se and look at a 501(c) type organization? And pros and cons to both. And so in January they'll be pursuing that a little bit more for consideration. But for now they are a commission that is under the Board of Supervisors direction and does a good job for our seniors. Let's see, what else is there? I think we have, one of the things that I think demonstrates our volunteerism in our community and supports our neighbors, and this is something that Marita has been involved in for many, many years, if not one of the sparks that got it going and off the ground, is the Murphy's Friends free Christmas Day dinner. And so Marita has been asking all of us to take one of these and post in our various communities, and I just want to acknowledge her energy into this. This is what you can do when you don't have government involved. Many, many people come together for this particular Christmas dinner hosted there at the Native Sons, and I know many people do a lot of cooking and baking for it, and Santas and stuff for kids and gifts and all sorts of good stuff. So anyway, I want to thank Marita too for her time on this. And so we do have 2 board members who are leaving us. This next meeting is our last meeting for the year, and with Marita and Darren. And there's been some discussion about a little event prior to our meeting, and we're not going to be doing that as we initially thought. We have some other ideas in mind to be able to acknowledge and send our appreciation to Marita and Darren for serving. So, Darren, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Just a couple brief things.
Okay.
Yeah. I would just say, in terms of announcements that we give about things that we're involved in, I was not at the last board meeting because I was up in the Sacramento area meeting with some people about waste-to-energy projects. I'm still very, very much committed to the research and time that I put into trying to help this county take what is a financial burden right now and potentially turn it into an asset with our Rock Creek landfill. There's a lot of new technologies that are going to change that process as we know it within our lifetime. So I look forward to continuing that vein in the future to help us with financial issues, especially related to the landfill.
Okay, thank you. Any reports from staff? Sherwin, admin office?
Nothing, but I would like to take the opportunity to congratulate Megan on her appointment. I know she'll do a great job for the board and for the county.
Thank you. Megan?
I just want to say thank you again. And I also wanted to clarify, I don't have anything to report, but I did want to clarify my comments about the Brown Act with all of the Williamson Act items that were on the agenda today. That was the most conservative read of the Brown Act. I know that in the past, a lot of these items had come to the board as one agenda item, and since we've gone to electronic modes, we've had to separate out the specific items to meet IQM2, the program that we use. So with this transition to electronic, I will also look, for instance, number 18 and 19, 20, 21, and then 22 and 23 would have historically been each their own, like item 1, 2, and 3 in the past. So what I will do is I will look at the Brown Act and see if a less conservative,
You go, girl.
yes, a less conservative opinion can be presented at a future date when items like this come forward, so we don't have to go through every single item. We can bulk them together as they apply to one another. Okay?
Thank you. Diane?
I just wanted to say that we have many vacancies that are coming up on the citizen boards, committees, and commissions with terms expiring on December 31st. If anyone is interested in applying for those vacancies, there is information available on our website. Applications are available on the website as well, in the administrative office. Your supervisors will have them as well. So if you are interested in applying and volunteering your time to participate in some great works, I encourage you to do so.
Thank you. Thank you. Peter, do you have anything you'd like to bring with planning, say with planning?
The last edits are in the works, and hopefully I'll have something out to you by next week.
Great.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
All right. Any public comments on what was mentioned here by the board on item number 24? All right. Seeing none, meeting adjourned. Thank you.